Chapter 1039. However, the Lotus God was too strong and had already transcended fate. Therefore, the net of fate could not find the Lotus God at all. It could only attribute Mohina Dojin's death to the previous person who had severely injured Mohina Dojin. The previous person was Yen Xuan. The rolling merit disappeared. The Dazhao sacred ground collapsed. For a moment, countless disciples of the Dazhao sacred ground looked at the sky in horror. The ocean of merit disappeared? How could this be? Countless disciples gathered in Jiaohu, in the south of the Dazhao sacred ground. Julu Academy's Meng Ling Tian led 4 other people outside the Julu Academy. Seniors, the Dazhao sacred ground collapsed? Meng Ling Tian said in shock. Meng Ling Tian was an immortal. Those who could be Meng Ling Tian seniors could only be stronger immortals. The 5 immortals looked at this scene in shock. Similarly, King Guai and Snake Emperor also arrived at the Dazhao sacred ground and looked at the rolling merit disappearing in shock. Your Majesty, although the Dazhao sacred ground's merit disappeared, the evil aura in the sky is still here. Clearly, the Lotus God is still here. Snake Emperor said with a solemn expression. On the other side, Meng Sanxing carried a huge gourd with 5 purple-robed men behind him. Each of them had a threatening aura and were much stronger than the upper emptiness realm. Clearly they were also immortals. The Dazhao sacred ground changed hands? Meng Sansheng's expression darkened. In the west, Kong Daoqiu quickly flew over with 5 men shrouded in countless rays of light. Did someone make a move first? Kong Daoqiu said in shock. In the north, Yun Xan Yao Tianshang, and 5 elders from the Archaic Mysteries sect. Junior brother, there's a change in the Dazhao sacred ground. We should go quickly. An elder said in a low voice. Yun Xian nodded. Another group of immortals arrived. Almost simultaneously, a group of immortals arrived outside the Dazhao sacred ground from all directions. The group of heroes surrounded the Lotus God. But how could the Lotus God be so easily surrounded? Great Jin Empire, Yanjing. In a pavilion in the palace. ZZ poured a cup of tea for Yen Xuan and accompanied Yen Xuan. Yen Xuan was looking at all sorts of information coming in from all over the world. He was looking at the military situation of the Great Jin Empire. Originally, ZZ did not need to pour the tea herself, but ZZ liked to accompany Yen Xuan. After taking a sip of tea, Yen Xuan looked at the memorial and smiled. Li Si? Sure enough, he was a genius who could help a king. Is that Li Si who wants to be the prime minister? ZZ asked curiously. Not bad. Yen Xuan smiled. However, just as Yen Xuan was halfway through his sentence, the providence of Dezhun suddenly skyrocketed. It was as if endless merit had flowed from the north. Brr. The 9-clawed golden dragon roared excitedly. Looks like Jin Dayu and Hua Guang have taken down another middle-rank sect. ZZ sighed. No, it's not a middle-rank sect. Is it an upper-rank sect? The Dazhao sacred ground? Yen Xuan stood up abruptly. The surging providence skyrocketed. In the blink of an eye, it had increased by nearly a third. Not only was Yen Xuan surprised by this scene, but even Yi Feng, Meng Wenrua, and the others looked at the sky in surprise. Some sensitive ministers quickly rushed to the imperial palace. Yi Feng walked at the front and quickly arrived at the palace. Your Majesty, Lord Yi, Lord Meng, and Lord Lu request an audience. Lu Jin shouted outside the small courtyard. Come in. Soon, a group of ministers rushed into Yen Xuan's courtyard. Your Majesty, is this the Dazhao sacred ground? Yi Feng asked excitedly. The ministers looked at Yen Xuan excitedly. That's right. The merit that the Dazhao sacred ground lost. Mohina Dojin is really dead this time. Although I don't know what happened to the Dazhao sacred ground, it's not important for now. What's important is that not only did the merit flow to Dezhen, but also the karmic rank. Yen Xuan said excitedly. If you don't take what the heavens give you, you will be punished. Get ready. Dezhen will advance to the heavenly dynasty. Yen Xuan said solemnly. Yes. The ministers were even more excited. Chapter 1040. Great Jin Empire, Skyward Palace. All the officials and generals were suppressing their excitement as they stood respectfully in the palace. Everyone knew that Great Jin was about to ascend to the Celestial Empire. Yen Xuan was wearing a black dragon robe and a black jade crown as he sat on the 9 dragons' heavenly chair. After ascending to the Imperial Empire, one would worship the heavens and earth. After ascending to the Imperial Empire, one would worship the heavens and not the earth. After ascending to the Celestial Empire, one would no longer worship the heavens and earth. Yen Xuan sat on the dragon throne and closed his eyes. His mind was immersed in the nine-clawed golden dragon. The nine-clawed golden dragon's pupils suddenly shrank as its eyes turned into Yan Chuan's eyes. Brr. The nine-clawed golden dragon let out a deafening roar. Stepping on the clouds, it absorbed the surging providence. Yan Chuan sensed the entire sea of providence. Suddenly, Yan Chuan caught a glimpse of the karmic position of heaven and earth. Brr. The nine-clawed golden dragon opened its mouth and swallowed the karmic position of heaven and earth. Upper karmic position. Brr. After swallowing the karmic position of heaven and earth, the nine-clawed golden dragon suddenly roared. Amidst the roar, the vast sea of providence was quickly absorbed. Whoosh. The karmic position of heaven and earth was visibly decreasing as it gathered into the nine-clawed golden dragon. The nine-clawed golden dragon was also surrounded by the karmic position of heaven and earth, gradually forming a giant cocoon. Rumble. The surging karmic position of heaven and earth gradually decreased. Gradually, 1/10 of the karmic position of heaven and earth was lost. The absorption only ended when the sea of providence was only 1/3 of its original size. The sea of providence suddenly quieted down. All the people focused their attention on the giant cocoon above the sea of providence. 1 incense sticks time, 2 incense sticks time, 9 incense sticks time. Crack. The giant cocoon let out a loud cracking sound. From the giant cocoon, a pair of dragon horns suddenly emerged. The dragon horns were not as before, but they were 9 times as long as they were before. Just the horns alone, the karmic position of heaven and earth. Brr. A dragon roar came from the cocoon. The giant cocoon suddenly shrank as if it had been sucked into the mouth of a dragon. The golden dragon of providence once again appeared in front of everyone. However, this time, it had already reached a length of 10,000 feet. Its entire body radiated golden light, as if it was a real dragon. The dragon's might surged and the dragon's scales went against the sun. As for the dragon claws, there were as many as 18 of them. The golden dragon with 18 claws twisted its body and stepped onto the sea of providence. It opened its mouth and roared. Ong! The world shook as the dragon roared. Countless people in Yanjin could only hear the dragon roar, which was so loud that their eardrums were about to shatter. Almost everyone could feel the heavenly might of the 18-clawed golden dragon. The voice was not only heard in Yanjin. It seemed to have spread to all the cities in Dezhen. Almost instantly, all the citizens in the thousands of cities in Dezhen heard the dragon roar from Yanjing. All of them looked at the sky in shock. At that moment, small golden dragons slowly appeared above the sea of providence. Thousands of small golden dragons appeared and danced above the sea of providence. As soon as the golden dragon with 18 claws appeared, Yan Chuan knew that it was done. His karmic ranking was finally stabilized. The golden dragon with 18 claws suddenly said, "Citizens of Dezhen, from today onwards, Dezhen will be promoted to the Celestial Empire. From now on, Dezhen will be the Celestial Empire." Boom. That was Yan Chuan's voice. His voice instantly spread to all corners of the world and into the ears of all the citizens of Dezhen. Carefree city? In a restaurant? What? The Celestial Empire? The Celestial Empire of Dezhen? Am I hallucinating? No, I heard it too. I heard His Majesty's voice too. That's His Majesty's voice? I've heard of it before. The Celestial Empire? Dezhen has been promoted to the Celestial Empire? In thousands of cities, countless citizens listened to Yan Chuan's voice in shock. Some cheered, some were sad. However, nothing could be changed. Dezhen was getting stronger. Yan capital. The golden dragon with 18 claws slowly transformed into a statue of a person. Yan Chuan. The 18-clawed golden dragon disappeared and transformed into the gigantic Yan Chuan. Nearly half of the small golden dragons suddenly transformed into the statues of the civil and military officials of the imperial court. The sky above the Sea of Providence changed rapidly. The statue of Yan Chuan slowly sat down on a 9-dragon throne that was condensed from Providence. The statues of the officials of Dezhen stood on both sides of Yan Chuan's body. It was a complete replica of the Skyward Palace. As soon as the statues appeared, the officials could mobilize the power of their statues. At the same time, a surge of providence descended on everyone. Countless officials immediately felt comfortable. Some of the officials with forbidden cultivation felt as if they were about to break through. The Sea of Providence slowly calmed down. The statues in the sky revealed a vast majesty. Dezhen had officially been promoted to the Celestial Empire. The spiritual qi on the statue of Yan Chuan on the Sea of Providence slowly disappeared. Yan Chuan's consciousness returned to the main body of the Skyward Palace. The officials immediately sensed the return of Yan Chuan's consciousness. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Long live the Emperor. Long live the Holy One. Bai Guanshan cheered, expressing their excitement at this moment. Meng Wenrua, draft the imperial edict and announce it to the world. Yin Chuan said. Yes, Your Majesty. Meng Wenrua said excitedly. At the same time, outside Dezhen, Jin Dayu and Hua Guang were leading an army to attack a middle-level sect. Suddenly, a voice sounded in the ears of the two of them and all the soldiers. From today onwards, Dezhen will be promoted to the Celestial Empire. From now on, Dezhen will be the Celestial Empire. It was Yin Chuan's voice. Through the providence of the Celestial Empire, it spread to everyone's ears in an instant. All the soldiers were slightly taken aback. Then they looked at Hua Guang and Jin Dayu. The two commanders looked at each other and finally shouted excitedly, "Long live Dezhen! Long live Dezhen!" The army cheered. On the other side, the disciples of the middle sect who were trapped stared blankly ahead. The army that was about to charge a moment ago was suddenly ecstatic. What were they cheering for? Yin Chuan's voice was only heard by the people of Dezhen. Therefore the disciples of the sect were confused. Dezhen's army is dumbfounded? It can't be. All of them are dumbfounded? While the disciples of the various sects were still in a daze, Hua Guang suddenly gave the order to charge. Kill. The army shouted excitedly. Dezhen's Celestial Empire. Skyward Palace. The court meeting had ended. The officials quickly went back to running the country. Only Yin Chuan sat on the dragon throne, deep in thought. With the investiture of the gods in one hand and the great stabilizing heavenly seal in the other, Yin Chuan smiled as he felt the providence of the two items. Celestial Empire? I finally reached the same height as my previous life, the 7th level of the upper void stage. It's slightly weaker than my previous life. But soon. Yin Chuan pondered. Dezhen ascended to the Celestial Empire. Even though many of the outer sect disciples could not sense it, some of the peerless powerhouses could sense it. At this moment in the former Dezhao sacred ground, Meng Sansheng, Kong Daoqiu, King Guai, Meng Ling Tian, Yun Xen, Yao Tianshang, and the others were still lamenting the collapse of the Dezhao sacred ground when they suddenly felt the heavenly might from Dezhen's Celestial Empire. Another sacred ground is born? Meng Ling Tian said in surprise. An immortal behind Meng Ling Tian shook his head and said, "It's not a sacred ground, it's the Celestial Empire." The Celestial Empire? Dezhen's Celestial Empire. That Yin Chuan is indeed not simple. Another immortal narrowed his eyes. Outside the Dezhao sacred ground, a group of immortals narrowed their eyes and looked toward the southeast. On the square of Dezhao Palace, Yangzigu had just submitted to the Lotus God when he sensed the powerful aura surrounding him. Yangzigu was already a human immortal now. With the help of the Lotus God's power, he was even more powerful. Naturally, he could feel the killing intent around him. A group of grasshoppers? Yangzigu sneered. At this moment, Yangzigu was in high spirits with great power in his hands. "Come out, you grasshoppers!" Yangzigu shouted coldly. A huge sound wave rolled out, causing the expressions of the surrounding immortals to change in the blink of an eye. Off, off, off. Streaks of light shot out as the immortals quickly gathered outside Dezhao Palace. A group of people here to die? Ah, just nice. Let's test my strength. Yangzigu laughed evilly. Boom. Yangzigu attacked first. West, Great Buddha Empire. Kong Mok also sensed the changes in the east through the Sea of Providence. A dragon's aura that surpasses mine? Like the great tragedy of southern divine continent? It's Yin Chuan from the east. It's that bastard Yin Chuan. He's ascended to the Celestial Empire. Kong Mok's face suddenly turned ferocious. Buddha Prophet's face darkened. So fast? That's right. How could I be wrong? Yin Chuan, that bastard, I should have killed him long ago. Kong Mok's face turned ferocious. Your Majesty. Buddha Prophet's face turned ugly. Prophet, you have to help me. You have to help me. Kong Mok shouted. Buddha Prophet's face was troubled. Prophet, you're the Buddha of the 10,000 Buddha sacred ground. I trust you the most. Only you can help me obtain the 10,000 Buddha sacred ground. Only by obtaining the upper karmic rank can my great Buddha Empire reach the Celestial Empire. As long as I obtain the Buddha's Sarira, my strength will skyrocket. Only by becoming stronger can we kill Yin Chuan for revenge. Kong Mok shouted. Buddha Prophet's brows furrowed deeply. Prophet, only you can help me. The great Buddha Empire must become the Celestial Empire. Must. Kong Mok grabbed Buddha Prophet and begged. Buddha Prophet's face became more and more troubled, as if he was struggling with something. Great Jin Empire. Upper Study. There were only 3 people in the upper study. Yin Chuan, Zizi and Lu Gang. Lu Gang handed over a mirror. Your Majesty, Empress, this is the image of Yang Zigu that was taken by the people of the East faction in the former Great Zhao Sacred Ground. They just arrived. Lu Gang said. Yin Chuan took the mirror. This mirror was very strange. The mirror couldn't reflect a person, but it could see a portrait as if it was drawn on. The image in the mirror was Yang Zigu. With this image I can use the Nailhead 7-arrow book. Zizi took it. Chapter 1041. The former Dazhao Sacred Ground. Billowing smog filled the sky as all the mountains, rivers and palaces of the Dazhao Sacred Ground were destroyed. The disciples of the Dazhao Sacred Ground were almost all dead. More than 20 immortals, along with a group of absolute powerhouses in this world, were currently besieging Yang Zhijiu, who was covered in evil qi. Ha ha, you can't do anything to me in this form. What if I go through a second demonic transformation? The pitch-black Yang Zigu laughed evilly. The immortals' faces sank. Everyone immortal array. Kong Daoqiu shouted. The group of immortals belonged to different forces, but facing Yang Zigu they could only nod. Immediately, everyone surrounded Yang Zigu and cast their spells, forming an immortal array. Umph. Yang Zigu snorted coldly. Lotus God, lend me your power. Yang Zigu shouted. Hum. The 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus above Yang Zigu's head suddenly released a dark energy that quickly poured into Yang Zigu's body. Ka ka ka. 2 huge horns slowly appeared on Yang Zigu's head. The immortals' faces sank. Everyone. Yun Xian suddenly shouted. Everyone looked over. The 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus doesn't have much power on its own, it needs a puppet. The 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus is extremely sturdy and has unparalleled evil intent. Back then no one could destroy it, so Immortal Master Damiao killed it. Without the puppet, the 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus is not much of a threat. As long as we destroy the puppet, as long as Yang Zigu dies, we will have succeeded. Yun Xian shouted. Kill Yang Zigu. Another immortal shouted. Immortal array kill. Kong Daoqiu shouted. You're courting death. The second demonic transformation, Yang Zigu said coldly. Boom. Dazhao Celestial Empire, Yanjing, inside the palace. In a courtyard. The huge courtyard was cleared and a large camp was set up. There was a tall platform above the camp with a straw doll on top. The words Yang Zigu and his birth date were written on the straw figurine. There was a lamp on the scarecrow's head and another lamp at its feet. Yen Chuan carried Miao on his shoulder and stood outside the high platform. He watched as Zizi shook the mirror with Yang Zigu's image in it at the scarecrow. The image fell into the scarecrow. Putting down the mirror, Zizi stepped on the ground and burned the talisman seal. Following that, Zizi bowed 3 times to the scarecrow respectfully. Miao, it's this again. Miao said blankly. In the distance, Zizi left the high platform after finishing her task. Alright, let's start today. 3 times a day. After 21 days, his soul will be scattered by my worship and I'll be able to nail the scarecrow to death. That Yang Zigu will also be dead. Zizi laughed. This Nailhead 7 Arrows book is indeed strange. Yin Chuan nodded. The former Great Zhao Holy Land. Roar. Immortal? Isn't it still in my hands? Yang Zhijiu, who was covered in a sinister aura, shouted excitedly. Yang Zigu's pitch-black hand was gripping an immortal's neck. It was as if Yang Zigu moved his hand, the immortal would be crushed to death in the blink of an eye. Yang Zigu's other hand stretched out behind him, forming a huge spherical shield around him. No matter how much the immortals outside attacked, they were unable to break through the shield. The immortal who was gripped by the neck seemed to have his cultivation locked. He was unable to move. Ha ha ha, die. Yang Zigu laughed evilly. Just as he was about to crush the immortal in front of him, Yang Zigu's body suddenly trembled. Buzz. With a tremble, the shield around him suddenly loosened. A large number of immortal spells attacked Yang Zigu's body. Boom. The immortal who was gripped by the scarecrow also escaped. Yang Zigu was sent flying by a group of immortals, but he did not suffer any serious injuries. How could this be? Why did I suddenly get distracted? It must be an illusion, an illusion. You locusts, die for me. Yang Zigu's eyes turned cold as he once again charged into the group of immortals. Great Jin Imperial Palace. Zizi wrote a talisman seal and burned it again. She bowed 3 times to the scarecrow. Once again Yang Zigu was about to succeed. Suddenly his mind shook. Boom. Once again a group of immortals turned danger into safety. Bastard, what's wrong with me? Yang Zigu was furious. Just like this, the battle lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Among the group of immortals, someone finally realized that something was wrong. It seems that someone is helping us. Meng Sansheng's expression suddenly changed. Huh? The group of immortals looked at Meng Sansheng in surprise. Did you notice that Yang Zigu would go crazy every once in a while? Meng Sansheng said in a deep voice. That's right, I was almost finished earlier. Was there a senior secretly helping me? The group of immortals who could not see any hope before suddenly became spirited. There was an expert helping them, an expert helping them. Suddenly, everyone saw a ray of hope and their hands began to exert more strength. Boom, boom, boom. After fighting for 5 days, Yang Zigu's mind was in a trance again and again. This made Yang Zigu more and more anxious. Lotus Goddess, why am I like this? My mind is not as focused as it was at the beginning. Yang Zigu finally asked the Lotus Goddess for help. Wait one more time, I will help you calculate. The voice of the Lotus Goddess came from the 10,000 Wonders demon Lotus. Okay. Yang Zigu nodded. Boom, boom. Although Yang Zigu had a lot of advantages when fighting with the group of immortals, he always dropped the ball at the crucial moment. This made Yang Zigu more and more anxious. Die, bastard. Yang Zigu once again attacked the despairing immortal. Wong. Again. Yang Zigu's body trembled and his mind was in a trance. This time he even had a nosebleed. Quick attack. The group of immortals shouted. Rumble. A huge force quickly hit Yang Zigu, and a huge explosion occurred where Yang Zigu was. However, after the explosion, Yang Zigu was still safe and sound. Lotus Goddess. Yang Zigu shouted in Jiaohu's direction. This was because Yang Zizhou could feel that his body was getting weaker and weaker. At this rate, it would not be long before he was dragged down to the same state as the group of immortals. At that time he would be finished. You are cursed. The voice of the Lotus Goddess came. Cursed? Yang Zigu was shocked. That's right, a curse. You are only an immortal and cannot resist this curse. You still have 16 days to live. After 16 days your soul will scatter. The voice of the Lotus Goddess came. 16 days? I only have 16 days to live? No, Lotus Goddess, you have to save me. You have to save me. Yang Zigu rushed to the sky in fear. He ignored the group of immortals and flew away in fear. If you want to live, you have to kill the person who cursed you. And that person, I have calculated that he is at the place where Maori's body was destroyed. The voice of the Lotus Goddess came. Yanjin. Yang Zigu's expression changed. That's right. The Lotus Goddess said. Yanjin? Since he is in Yanjin, then I will go and destroy Yanjin. Yanchuan? I can even kill a group of immortals, let alone a puny Yanchuan. I will destroy Yanjin and leave no one alive. Everyone will die. Yang Zigu said with a ferocious face. With that, Yang Zigu immediately shot towards the southeast. Where do you think you are going? When the group of immortals saw Yang Zigu leave, they thought that he was going to escape. Everyone chased after Yang Zigu. Whoosh! Wherever he went, a storm would roll up. Yang Zigu was in the front and the group of immortals behind him. They kept rushing towards Yanjin. Quick, quick, quick. Yang Zigu's face was anxious. He was afraid that it would be too late. Yanjin. ZZ was still worshipping the scarecrow 3 times a day. Yan Chuan started to deal with the state affairs. Because, just a moment ago, another huge stream of merit flowed in. It could be seen that Hua Guang and Jin Deyu had achieved great results. In the upper study. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Other than the Julu Academy, there is only one middle sect left in the East Divine Continent. Yifeng said with a smile. The East Divine Continent is only the first step. Yan Chuan nodded with satisfaction. Wenrua, your task will be more important next. Yan Chuan looked at Meng Wenrua and said. The Great Jin Empire's speed of conquering cities is indeed very fast. I have already sensed it. All these years I have been gathering officials, but it is still a little difficult to take on the entire East Divine Continent. Your Majesty, after we take down the last middle sect, we may need to conduct a large-scale examination. I hope that Your Majesty will conduct it personally. Meng Wenrua said solemnly. Then let's start now. Wenrua, go and draft the documents. 10 years later, the Great Jin Empire will conduct a large-scale examination. The candidates will face the 5 continents. Anyone who is knowledgeable can participate. Yan Chuan said solemnly. Yes, but Your Majesty, you know that the world is too big. Meng Wenrua frowned. Didn't we subdue a group of upper void realm cultivators in the East Divine Continent this time? Let them run as fast as they can. Pick out a group of recruitment officials and scatter them to the various continents. They will be responsible for identifying the people that the Great Jin Empire needs. When the time is up, let these upper void realm cultivators bring these people back. 10 years later, on the 9th day of the 9th month, the large-scale examination will be held. Yin Chuan said solemnly. Yes. Meng Wenruo replied. Hua Guang and Jin Deyu were at the battlefield. 1,000,000 cultivators were bound in a huge plaza. They were all looking at the army with hatred. Hua Guang and Jin Deyu ignored them. Instead they looked at Li Si. Lord Li, there is still one middle sect left. We will not stay here any longer. Bring the victorious army and conquer the last middle sect. We will present the grandest congratulatory gift to your majesty and the Great Jin Empire. These 1,000,000 prisoners will be left to you. Hua Guang said with a smile. Li Si nodded. Hua Guang and Jin Deyu led the army and left quickly. Li Si looked at the 1,000,000 cultivators. He waved his sleeve and said coldly, "Kill them all." Yes. The soldiers standing guard on the square immediately responded in unison. Bao Zhen, you will die a horrible death. Bao Zhen, Li Si, you traitor. The 1,000,000 prisoners shouted in shock. Li Si ignored them and looked at a deputy general at the side. Apart from the disciples of this sect who surrendered to our Great Jin Empire before the war, issue an arrest warrant for the rest of the escaped disciples. Put up their portraits in all the major cities. Those who harbor them will have their entire family wiped out. Those who capture the fugitives will be rewarded with an earth-grade cultivation technique and 3,000 spirit stones. Li Si said in a deep voice. Yes, the deputy general replied. No, Bao Zhen. Li Si, you will die a horrible death. The shouts continued, but what was the use of shouting now? The 18th day. A group of immortals trapped Yang Zigu again. Bastards, get lost, get lost. Yang Zigu roared. Boom. Yang Zhijiu once again escaped, even though his arm was heavily injured. Once he escaped, he once again shot toward Yanjing. Cough cough. Yang Zigu coughed and spat out blood. He said anxiously, it's been 18 days. There are only 3 days left. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Chapter 1042. Beijing, Upper Study Room. Yin Chuan sat alone behind the desk while Feng Yinyang, Yi Feng, and Meng Wenruo waited respectfully. Yin Chuan closed his eyes. At this moment, Yin Chuan's statue above the fortune cloud looked toward the northwest with divine light shining in its eyes. However, this gaze was extremely far away. After Great Jin became the Celestial Empire, Yin Chuan could use the Golden Dragon of Providence to survey the world. As long as it was within Great Jin, Yin Chuan could see everything with his eyes. In the southwest direction, it was a huge desert. Boom, boom, boom. The sandstorm rushed into the sky, covering the entire sky in a dusky expanse. Within the sandstorm, radiance shot in all directions. Loud sounds rang out one after another, shaking the sandstorm until it covered the sky and covered the sun. Bastards, scram, you bunch of grasshoppers. Yang Zigu roared in the desert. Yang Zigu is getting weaker and weaker. Kill him. Kong Daoqiu shouted excitedly. Immortal swarm formation. Yun Xian called out. Formation crush. The immortals shouted in unison. There's only 1 day left, only 1 day left. You locust sun fire. Yang Zigu roared. Boom. High up in the sky, the scorching sun once again plunged straight down with rolling flames. Once the heavenly fire appeared, the desert seemed to have turned into a huge furnace. Under the raging fire, the sand and dust that had been there turned into a gorgeous color, as if they had melted into countless glass beads. Kill. The immortals shouted in unison. Boom. Within the sandstorm, a black figure shot out like a stream of light amidst the huge collision of forces. It was Yang Zigu. At this moment, Yang Zigu's left arm was almost destroyed. His flesh and blood were gone, leaving only white bones. One of the horns on his head was also broken. Yang Zigu was severely injured. Pooh. Yang Zigu spat out blood as he sped toward Yanjing. 1 more day, 1 more day. You bunch of locusts, when I destroy Yanjing, none of you will be able to escape. I will use the cruelest methods to slowly torture you. Yang Zigu flew into the distance with great hatred. Boom. A group of immortals also quickly charged out of the sandstorm. He got away again. Meng Lingtian's expression was extremely ugly. The group of immortals chased after him. Although they were furious, most of them came to their senses. Yang Zigu is getting weaker and weaker. There is indeed an expert targeting him. He is obviously going to find trouble with that expert. Meng Sanxing said in a deep voice. Who is it? Kong Daoqiu asked with a frown. It doesn't matter who it is. Yang Zigu is getting weaker and weaker. Just now he even injured himself to escape. His strength is getting weaker and weaker. Now even if the Lotus God helps him, he's at most an Earth Immortal or even worse. Let's work harder. We must kill him. We can't let him recover. Yun Xian shouted. Okay. The group of immortals quickly chased after Yang Zigu again. Yang Zigu used a secret art by injuring himself to increase his speed. In the blink of an eye, he had left the group of immortals behind. Of course, the group of immortals wouldn't lose him. They would just be a bit late. He seems to be going to Yanjing, Meng Lingtian suddenly said in shock. Yanjing? Is it Yanchuan? Impossible. How powerful is Yanchuan? Kong Daoqiu said in disbelief. The group of immortals continued to chase after him. Meanwhile, in Yanjing, Yanchuan, who was in the study room, became serious and came back to his senses. Your Majesty, why did you summon us? Diguzi asked. Yanchuan frowned and said, Just now, I felt a huge fluctuation in the fortune cloud sea. The fortune cloud sea is able to sense everything in the world. With such a huge fluctuation, something big must have happened. I used the divine statue's vision to look. I saw that Yang Zigu is coming to Yanjing with the help of the Lotus God. Oh. The group of immortals' faces changed. Yang Zigu is now more powerful than he was on Maori Day. Feng Yinyang set up the array and protect Yanjing. Yanchuan said. Yes, Your Majesty. Feng Yinyang replied. Feng, Wen Ruo, you two are in charge of maintaining stability in Yanjing and comforting the people and officials. Yanchuan said. Yes, Your Majesty. The two of them replied. After that, Yanchuan went straight to the backyard. Yanchuan knew that Yang Zigu was coming for the Nailhead 7-arrow book. Luckily it was the last day. What's wrong? Zizi looked at Yanchuan in confusion. Yang Zigu is coming. Yanchuan said. There might be a fierce battle coming up. Zizi, you're in charge of the Nailhead 7-arrow book. Make sure there are no mistakes. I'll stall for time. We must kill Yang Zigu. Yanchuan said. Okay. Zizi nodded. After that, Yanchuan quickly went to the square of the Skyward Palace. Looking at the statue in the sky, Yanchuan's eyes narrowed. Roar. Yanchuan's statue let out a loud dragon roar. Suddenly, it soared into the sky and turned into an 18-clawed golden dragon of Providence. Boom. The 18-clawed golden dragon of Providence stepped on the sea of Providence and let out a long roar. The dragon's roar pierced through the 9 heavens. At the same time, the roar spread to every city in Great Zhen and into the ears of every citizen. When they heard the dragon's roar again, all the citizens put down everything they were doing. Citizens of Great Zhen, listen up. I am Yanchuan, Yanchuan said. As he spoke, Yanchuan's voice suddenly spread to the ears of all the citizens of Dezhen. In a restaurant in Carefree City. His Majesty's voice? I heard His Majesty's voice. Countless citizens, soldiers, and city guards looked up at the sky. Citizens of Great Zhen, please raise your right hand and borrow my power. You will be weakened for a short period of time, but you will recover after some rest. All city guards keep watch. Kill anyone who dares to sneak up on you after borrowing my power. Exterminate your entire family. Yanchuan said. Through the 18-clawed golden dragon of Providence, Yanchuan's voice spread across the entire Yanjing. All the citizens looked up at the sky in confusion. Borrowing the citizens' power? On a street in Carefree City. His Majesty wants to borrow our power? How can he do that? Yeah, it's easy to borrow power. Is this a joke? While everyone was doubting, someone finally listened to Yanchuan's advice and tried it. A burly man slowly raised his right hand. Raise your right hand? What's the use of that? The moment the burly man raised his right hand, phew. The burly man felt as though his power had been sucked away in an instant. In an instant, the burly man was powerless. Smack. The man fell to the ground, gasping for breath. Big brother? What happened to you? Someone exclaimed. My power has been borrowed by His Majesty. The burly man said in disbelief as though he was in a dream. Ah. Everyone was in an uproar. Did he really lend his power to Yanchuan? Similar scenes were happening in the thousands of cities in Great Zhen. Many citizens immediately understood what was going on. Lending his power to His Majesty? Great Zhen had developed too quickly. Although there were countless citizens, there were still some who refused to obey the laws of Great Shen. These people ignored them, but more people quickly raised their right hands. His Majesty, please use my power. His Majesty, please use my power. One by one they raised their right hands. Surges of power seemed to have crossed time and space and quickly gathered in Yanjin. The surging power from all over the world quickly surged into the body of the 18 Claws Golden Dragon. The 18 Claws Golden Dragon's body suddenly expanded. Brr. The 18 Claws Golden Dragon roared and charged towards Yen Chuan. Boom. The vast 18 Claws Golden Dragon strangely rushed into Yen Chuan's tiny body. Rumble. The Sea of Providence kept churning. Endless power quickly gathered and surged into Yen Chuan's body. Around Yen Chuan's body, the air seemed to have been stirred up by his power. Rumble. A large number of cracks suddenly appeared on the stone floor under Yen Chuan's feet. Under the power of the people, Yen Chuan's body kept growing. He was originally as tall as a person, but in the blink of an eye he became as tall as two people. And it was still growing. Yen Chuan had already understood the situation, so his clothes were also Dharma treasures that could expand with Yen Chuan. Yen Chuan's body was getting bigger and bigger. The power of the people of Dezhen kept gathering. There were thousands of cities. Although many people were still watching, there were enough people to contribute their strength. About 1/5 of the people gave their power. And in Yanjin, the place where the people of Dezhen were the most united, more than 80% of the people gave their power. After countless people gave their power, they sat on the ground weakly. However, when they saw Yen Chuan's growing body, everyone's eyes widened. While they were shocked, they also felt lucky. In the blink of an eye, Yen Chuan had reached 100 feet tall. Yen Chuan didn't restrain himself. Instead, he continued to grow. 200 feet, 300 feet, 400 feet. The change didn't stop until Yen Chuan's body reached 1,000 feet tall. When Yen Chuan lifted his leg or waved his hand, it was as if he could create a huge storm. Although the dragon robe covered his body, the people could still see the explosive power on Yen Chuan's body through some gaps. 1,000 feet tall Yen Chuan was as tall as a 1,000-story building. Some ordinary people even looked up, but they couldn't see the top. The towering giant stood with its head facing the sky and its feet on the ground, gazing towards the northwest. With one step, Yen Chuan was already outside of Beijing. Boom. When he landed, the ground shook. With just a single step, it was as if an earthquake had taken place. The people of Yanjin were dumbfounded. Meow meow, your sister. Meow meow was also dumbfounded and dropped a spirit stone on the ground. The people of Yanjin, the officials, the guards and the army were also dumbfounded. Only Feng Yinyang was still conscious. He quickly set up an array to protect Yanjin. ZZ continued to worship the straw man patiently. In the northwest, Yang Zigu flew over quickly with a secret art. Soon we'll reach Yanjing soon. Yanjing Yen Chuan, you bunch of locusts, I want you all dead. Yang Zhijio's face was ferocious. Boom. Accompanied by a gust of wind, Yang Zhijio finally arrived at the outskirts of Yanjing after half an hour. The vicious look on his face suddenly disappeared. Dragging his injuries, he stood in midair, looking at the towering giant before him in a daze. It was a 1,000-story building, but Yen Chuan was standing in front of Yang Zigu at the moment. Grasshopper. Yang Zigu suddenly felt that he was the grasshopper. The giant didn't say anything and slapped at the grasshopper. The air around his palm suddenly formed a vortex. It attacked Yang Zigu. Chapter 1043. Exterminating Yang Zigu. The group of heroes was flying towards Yanjing. Due to the severity of the situation, the heroes did not repel anyone. The immortals even used spells to bring along the peerless powerhouses who had yet to become immortals. They passed by a city. King Gai suddenly saw the people below. The people suddenly raised their right hand and fell to the ground. Your Majesty. Cough cough. The Serpent Emperor coughed and said in surprise. The Dazhen Empire has indeed ascended to the Heavenly Empire. I didn't expect Yen Chuan to be so familiar with the Heavenly Empire and know how to mobilize the power of the Dazhen Empire. King Gai said in a deep voice. Cough cough. Your Majesty, if that expert is Yen Chuan, then it'll be a little tricky. Cough cough. The Serpent Emperor said solemnly. The heroes besieged Yang Zigu but could not do anything about it. However, Yen Chuan was able to suppress Yang Zigu from so far away. Did that not mean that Yen Chuan was more powerful? In the future, when the Dazhen Empire conquered the world, would it be easy with Yen Chuan as an obstacle? King Gai shook his head and said, along the way, not everyone has given it their all. I still have a backup plan. I can see that Meng Sanxing Yao Tianshang, and Kong Daoqiu did not give it their all. King Gai said in a deep voice. Them? The Serpent Emperor narrowed his eyes. Human immortals are immortals who pass the tribulation at the 9th level of the upper void stage. Although they are immortals, they are the weakest immortals. Although they have many exquisite immortal techniques, their strength is only at the 11th level of the upper void stage. Mystic immortals are equivalent to the 12th level of the upper void stage. Yao Tianshang inherited all of Zhu's memories. Zhu was at the 12th level of the upper void stage in his past life. Although Yao Tianshang did not reach that level, he has a foundation. Meng Sanxing hid his strength even better. King Gai said in a deep voice. Cough cough. This world is different from what we thought. The Serpent Emperor said in a deep voice. King Gai, you nodded. The Dazhao holy ground has shown me many things. First it's Jingming. No wonder when Jingming was alive no one dared to rebel. Your Majesty, Jing's strength. The Serpent Emperor frowned. Oh, Snake Emperor, you can tell? King of Gai's expression changed. The Snake Emperor smiled bitterly and said, actually, I've been guessing and suspecting all these years, but I've never dared to be sure. Tell me. King of Gai said in a low voice. Jingming, it might be Sky Pillar's group. Cough cough. The Snake Emperor frowned. The eyes of King Guai's skeleton flickered. Qingtian, are you saying that Jing Ting is one of the top immortals in the immortal world? Yes, the ancestral immortal stage. The Snake Emperor sighed. Rumor has it that the Lotus deity is also at the ancestral immortal realm. Jing Ting has also reached the ancestral immortal realm? King Guai said solemnly. Therefore, Your Majesty, you don't have to hold a grudge against Jingming. This kind of person has already surpassed our current understanding. What Your Majesty wants is to accumulate as much foundation as possible in this realm so that the path of the Celestial Empire can be further improved. The Snake Emperor consoled. Yes, Serpent Emperor. To be able to receive your help is the greatest blessing in my life. King Guai nodded. Cough cough cough. The Snake Emperor coughed and said bitterly, I dare not forget the favor of saving my life back then. My fate has been damaged and I don't know how long I have left to live. I will do my best while I am still alive. I will definitely think of a way to save you. King Guai said with certainty. The Snake Emperor nodded. However, there was not much hope in his eyes. The group of immortals around them looked in the direction that Yang Zigu went and frowned. Was it really Yan Jin? Could that expert really be Yan Chuan? The group of elites revealed complicated expressions. Especially Kong Daoqiu. According to blood relations, Kong Daoqiu was Yan Chuan's grandfather. Not only was Kong Daoqiu not happy that his grandson had suddenly become so powerful, but he was also a little worried. Yan Jin. The 10,000 feet tall giant Yan Chuan. Although his body was incomparably huge, his speed and strength did not decrease at all. Taking in the power of the people with the power of the world, it struck towards Yang Zhijiu, who was still in a daze. The huge palm pressed down on him. Yang Zigu's expression changed. At this moment, Yang Zigu's left arm was injured, so he could only use his right arm to block the attack. A huge energy palm suddenly appeared. Bam! The two palms collided. All of a sudden, there was a huge earthquake in the northwest of Beijing. Yang Zigu's energy palm shattered, and Yang Zigu was sent flying by Yan Chuan's attack. Pfft! Yang Zigu spat out another mouthful of blood. Bastard! Yang Zigu roared angrily. In the blink of an eye, Yang Zigu's feet on the ground slowly grew. In the blink of an eye, Yang Zigu became 5,000 feet tall. Yan Chuan threw another punch. Yang Zigu's feet on the ground collided with Yan Chuan's fist. The two fists collided. Bam! Even though Yan Jin was enveloped by the array, it was still shaken by the impact. Bang! Yang Zigu was sent flying by Yan Chuan's punch. Impossible. No. Lotus God, lend me your power. Lend me again. Yang Zigu yelled. Humph? That's all you got? Yan Chuan snorted. He waved his hand and a huge suction force sucked Yang Zigu into his right palm. Universe in the palm. Yan Chuan used the universe in the palm again. Countless stars suddenly appeared in the right palm of the towering giant. It was as though a galaxy had appeared in Yan Chuan's palm in an instant. Lotus God, lend me your power. Lotus God. Yang Zigu yelled. Waves of energy flowed into Yang Zigu's body from the 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus. Rumble. A third horn appeared on Yang Zigu's head. Yang Zigu had been demonized for the third time. Yang Zigu's power surged again. A terrifying energy was released and it seemed to be repelling the galaxy in Yan Chuan's palm. The universe in the palm was squeezing Yang Zigu with the power of a galaxy, But Yang Zigu was also repelling it with the power of the Lotus God. The two forces clashed fiercely. A booming sound came from Yanchuan's palm. Crack, crack, crack. Some of the stars that were close to the two forces even had a large number of cracks on them, as if they would collapse at any moment. Yang Zigu yelled excitedly, "Haha, Yanchuan, lend me your power. I'm immortal now." His body moved quickly as if he wasn't bound by the universe in the palm. Yanchuan's eyes turned cold. His body slowly shrank. As Yanchuan's body shrank, all the energy in his body gathered in his right palm. Whoosh! The original galaxy in his palm suddenly split into 2 galaxies. Then, as more power gathered, it split into 3 galaxies, then 4 galaxies until it reached 10 galaxies before stopping. 10 galaxies, the power increased tenfold. Yang Zigu, who had almost escaped from the universe in the palm, suddenly couldn't move. How is this possible? Yang Zigu yelled. Crack, 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 crack. The power of 10 galaxies kept acting on Yang Zigu's body. Yang Zigu instinctively felt pain. Roar, ah! Yang Zigu yelled in pain. Lotus God, lend me your power. Lend me more. Yang Zigu yelled in pain. The myriad wonders demonic lotus suddenly said, I can lend you more, but you can't take it anymore. If I lend you more, you'll explode. You have the strength of a sky immortal now, and the pressure on you is only at the level of a sky immortal. But I can't move. Yang Zigu yelled in pain. If you want to die, I'll lend you more. The Lotus God's voice sounded again. Yang Zigu could feel his blood expanding. He knew that if he took any more, he would die immediately. Lotus God, save me. Save me. Yang Zigu yelled. This lotus has only sealed its own power once. After saving Mao Ri's soul, it's gone. It can only borrow power, it can't control itself. The Lotus God said. Yanchuan, let me out if you dare. Let's fight fair and square. Yang Zigu yelled in pain. Yanchuan looked at his palm and sneered, I'm fighting fair and square now. Let me out. Yang Zigu yelled. Yanchuan looked at him coldly. Just like that, the stalemate lasted for 2 hours. Yin capital, the palace. Zizi stepped onto the platform again. This is the last time. Zizi said solemnly. Zizi bowed respectfully to the scarecrow again. The lights on the scarecrow's head and feet suddenly flickered. Yang Zigu spat out a mouthful of blood. Again. Yang Zigu yelled in fear. 1 bow. 2 bows. 3 bows. When Zizi bowed 3 times, the lights on the scarecrow's head and feet suddenly went out. Yang Zigu trembled. His eyes turned blank as if his soul had left his body. On the platform, Zizi shot a nail into the scarecrow's chest. Stop. A large amount of blood flowed out of the scarecrow's body. Success. Zizi said excitedly. In the universe in the palm, a huge hole appeared in Yang Zigu's chest. Yang Zigu's will, soul and body were all destroyed. Boom. Yang Zhizhou's body exploded with a bang. The evil energy was forced out of the universe in the palm. Jade Emperor. Yanchuan yelled. Whoosh. The Jade Emperor sword shot over and quickly absorbed the black energy. Yanchuan stared at the 10,000 wonders demonic lotus in the universe in the palm. Kid, I have endless power for you. Do you want it? A friendly voice came from the 10,000 wonders demonic lotus. Yanchuan sneered, Lotus God, you've got the wrong idea. I was the one who released the 10,000 wonders demonic lotus back then and brought harm to the world. Today I'll destroy the 10,000 wonders demonic lotus and end your dream. The Lotus God snorted. The 10,000 wonders demonic lotus suddenly emitted a dazzling black light. The evil energy surged towards the universe in the palm. Destroy? Although I created this lotus casually back then, it is not something you can destroy. The Lotus God said coldly. Screech. The Jade Emperor sword suddenly flew out and shot towards the 10,000 wonders demonic lotus. Boom. Under Yanchuan's control, the Jade Emperor sword stabbed into the heart of the 10,000 wonders demonic lotus. Goyulu. The Jade Emperor sword crazily absorbed the evil energy of the 10,000 wonders demonic lotus. The Jade Emperor sword could absorb as much as the Lotus God released. In the blink of an eye, the energy of the 10,000 wonders demonic lotus was absorbed. Furthermore, the Jade Emperor sword was still crazily absorbing the energy of the 10,000 wonders demonic lotus. Crack. A crack suddenly appeared on one of the petals of the 10,000 wonders demonic lotus. A crack. Bastard kid, do you know who I am? You dare to disobey me? Aren't you afraid that I will kill you? The Lotus God said coldly. If I don't disobey you, you won't kill me? Furthermore, disobey? Ah. Yanchuan laughed crazily. Gurgle. The Jade Emperor Sword crazily absorbed the evil energy of the 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus. The universe in the palm had been removed. Yan Chuan knew that the 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus had no vessel and could not escape. As for the lotus god's revenge? Although Yan Chuan knew it was scary, he was not afraid at all. In fact, facing the lotus god, Yan Chuan's violent nature seemed to have been awakened. Gulyalu. The Jade Emperor Sword crazily absorbed the evil energy. In the distance, rays of light shot over. The group of immortals quickly flew over. They looked at the slightly scattered battlefield and then at the Jade Emperor Sword devouring the 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus. The group of immortals was stunned. Chapter 1044. Rays of light landed not far away from Yan Chuan. All of the immortals were surrounded by countless rays of light as they prepared to kill Yang Zhijiu. However, the sight before them made everyone realize that Yang Zigu was already dead. Yan Chuan. Meng Lingtian said in surprise. Meng Lingtian realized that every time he saw Yan Chuan, his knowledge would be overturned. It was the same every time. This time Meng Lingtian was even more shocked. Was Yan Chuan really that strong? He was able to severely injure Yang Zigu from billions of miles away, and even lured Yang Zigu here and killed him on the spot? He had more than 20 immortals on his side. Were they still no match for Yan Chuan? Was the decision he had made in the past wrong? Kong Daoqiu also looked at Yan Chuan with mixed feelings. He was conflicted when he came, but now that he had witnessed it with his own eyes, he looked at Yan Chuan and did not know what to say. Yun Xian, Yao Tianshang, Meng Sanxing, King of Gai, and the others looked at Yan Chuan with mixed feelings. Yang Zigu was an expert that had attracted the attention of the immortals, but Yan Chuan had killed him? The 10,000 Wonders lotus is destroying it? Yun Xian said in surprise. One of the petals of the 10,000 Wonders lotus suddenly cracked and fell off. It turned into an evil aura that was absorbed by the Jade Emperor Sword. Isn't the 10,000 Wonders lotus indestructible? Immortal Master Damiao placed it in the Feng Shui formation because it couldn't be destroyed. Can Yan Chuan really destroy the 10,000 Wonders lotus? Meng Lingtian was startled when he saw it too. Everyone looked at Yan Chuan. Yan Chuan had gathered his power in his palm, so he had shrunk down. Yan Chuan was controlling the Jade Emperor Sword with all his power. Buzz. The Jade Emperor Sword kept shaking. The black aura formed a whirlpool around it, but the Jade Emperor Sword continued to absorb the power of the 10,000 Wonders lotus under Yan Chuan's desperate control. Gurgle. It made a gurgling sound like a whale sucking in water. Yan Chuan did not dare to underestimate the lotus god. The immortals around them did not interrupt him. The lotus god was the world's enemy. If anyone dared to stop him from expelling the lotus god. The petals of the 10,000 Wonders lotus withered one. Kid, what's your name? The lotus god's angry voice came from the 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus. The lotus god's eyes? The immortals' expressions changed. When they looked at Yan Chuan, there was a trace of pity in their eyes. Remember, my name is Yan Chuan. Yan Chuan said coldly. Since he was already an enemy of the lotus god, Yan Chuan no longer hid his intentions. Hiding was not his style. Yan Chuan? Haha, I just killed the Emperor of Yama not long ago. Now there's another Yan? Ah. The lotus god's voice was cold. Yan Chuan? I'll come back for you. The lotus god's voice was threatening. Buzz. The 10,000 Wonders lotus evil aura suddenly froze. The lotus god seemed to have cut off the connection with the 10,000 Wonders lotus. Without the support of the lotus god, the 10,000 Wonders lotus withered quickly. Crack, 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 crack. The petals shattered and turned into evil aura, which was quickly absorbed by the Jade Emperor Sword. In the blink of an eye, the 10,000 Wonders lotus disappeared completely. The Jade Emperor Sword floated in the air with evil aura. It was as if it had not completely digested it. Yan Chuan waved his hand. Screech. The Jade Emperor Sword flew into the palace. Yan Chuan stepped forward and looked at the immortals in front of him. Everyone, are you here to kill Yang Zigu? Yan Chuan asked. At this moment, the power Yan Chuan displayed was enough to move everyone. At the same time, everyone recognized Yan Chuan's strength. They no longer treated him as a junior. That's right. I didn't expect you to kill him. Yao Tianshang exclaimed. Yang Zigu is dead. Is there anything else? Yan Chuan asked. Yan Chuan did not want to entertain the immortals. Hence, he did not ask anyone to stay. No. Goodbye. Yao Tianshang smiled. Yun Xian looked at Yao Tianshang and nodded. Your Majesty, this is a great deed. Yun Xian will take her leave. Yan Chuan nodded. Yao Qinshang led the archaic sect Immortals and left. Meng Sanxing looked at Yan Xuan. Perhaps because Yan Xuan had saved Meng Sanxing previously, Meng Sanxing saw through Yan Xuan's intentions. He did not say anything and only nodded at Yan Xuan. Then he led the Immortals and flew away. Meng Lingtian also saw through Yan Xuan's intentions. He led the Immortals and left. King of Gaia and Snake Emperor looked at Yan Xuan. Congratulations to your majesty for ascending to the heavenly empire. King of Gaia said. It seems like your majesty's injuries have recovered. Congratulations. Yan Xuan nodded. We won't disturb you. King of Gaia said. I won't send you off. Yan Xuan nodded. King of Gaia brought Snake Emperor and flew towards the south. Only Kong Daoqiu and his group were left. Kong Daoqiu, Yan Xuan is your grandson, right? An immortal behind Kong Daoqiu suddenly said in a strange tone. Kong Daoqiu frowned and said, Kong Shantian, what are you trying to say? The immortal called Kong Shantian smiled and said, Back then your daughter and my son Kong Mok fought for the position of crown prince. My son Kong Mok won. I didn't expect you to have a grandson. Haha, your grandson is not simple. Do you want to continue fighting for the position of crown prince? Kong Shantian's expression was cold and vicious. He looked at Kong Daoqiu and Yan Xuan with a hint of malice. Kong Daoqiu smiled coldly and said, What do you think? Kong Daoqiu, let me remind you. Although he is Kong Susu's son, his surname is not Kong. The old ancestor will not agree to it. Kong Shantian sneered. Don't worry about it. Kong Daoqiu said coldly. Kong Shantian snorted. Following that, Kong Shantian left alone. The direction he left in was none other than the direction that King of Gaia and Snake Emperor had left in. Kong Daoqiu and the four immortals behind him looked at Kong Shantian in the distance. They did not stop him, nor did they say anything. Clearly they understood what Kong Shantian meant. Kong Daoqiu turned to Yan Xuan. Dean Kong, is there anything else? Yan Xuan looked coldly at Yan Xuan. Susu gave birth to a good son. Haha, Yan Xuan, how about? Kong Daoqiu smiled and wanted to stay and talk to Yan Xuan. However, Yan Xuan smiled coldly and said, Dean Kong, you'd better go back to where you came from. Kong Daoqiu's expression froze. Yan Xuan, Kong Daoqiu is your grandfather. An immortal behind him shouted. Yan Xuan smiled coldly and said, Grandfather? When my mother died, where was grandfather? When Kong Imoku forced my mother to her death, where was grandfather? I don't believe that you couldn't stop him. When your mother died, it was a family rule. Once she was involved, no one could interfere. Kong Daoqiu said in a low voice. Yan Xuan smiled coldly and said, No one could interfere? Do you think I'm that gullible? I'm already giving you face by calling you Dean Kong. Don't force me. Kong Daoqiu narrowed his eyes. I know what you're thinking. You want the Zhen to rely on your Kong family? When my mother died, you didn't care. When I was young and innocent, you abandoned me. Now that I'm strong, you want me for your own use? Dean Kong, I only suppressed the killing intent in my heart because of this trace of blood. If it weren't for this blood connection, I would have annihilated the Kong family. Yan Xuan said in a cold tone. Destroy the Kong family? Kong Daoqiu's eyes turned cold. What? You want to attack me too? With just you? Yan Xuan's voice was filled with hostility. Kong Daoqiu clenched his fists and suppressed the anger in his heart. Yan Xuan, after all, you have the blood of the Kong family. Kong Daoqiu tried to persuade him. Ha 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 ha. Yan Xuan laughed disdainfully. My mother also had the blood of the Kong family. Why don't I see any pity from you? The Kong family? I, Yan Xuan, am not a rebel. I can accept the Kong family, but I have a condition. Yan Xuan said in a low voice. Kong Daoqiu was puzzled. Take Kong Mok's head and offer it to my parents in heaven. At the same time, all of the Kong family's disciples need to kowtow to my mother's grave 3 times to repent for their past sins. That way, I will acknowledge the Kong family as my family, and I can even give you a position in the Dezhen Empire. Yan Xuan said coldly. Bastard. Preposterous. Unfilial son. The group of immortals stared at Yan Xuan angrily. Yan Xuan did not back down at all. He stared coldly at the group of immortals led by Kong Daoqiu. Yan Xuan and Kong Daoqiu stared at each other fiercely. They stared at each other for 10 breaths of time, neither of them backing down. You will regret this. Kong Daoqiu said coldly. Yan Xuan clenched his fist, and a thin arc of electricity appeared around Yan Xuan's fist. It was as if the surrounding space had cracked. Just as the two of them were about to attack, suddenly Kong Daoqiu's expression changed. The group of immortals' expressions also changed. They all looked toward the west at the same time. Is there a change in the 10,000 Buddha sacred ground? One of the immortals asked. Everyone looked at each other and then at Kong Daoqiu. Kong Daoqiu finally looked at Yan Chuan coldly and turned around. Let's go. Let's go back first. The group of immortals immediately shot toward the west and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yan Chuan was left alone. He stood in the air and stared coldly into the distance. On the other side, King of Gai left quickly with Snake Emperor. However, they did not fly far before Kong Shantian suddenly appeared in front of King of Gai. Stop right there. Kong Shantian shouted coldly. Boom. King of Gai and Snake Emperor paused and looked at Kong Shantian. Cough cough cough. Your Majesty, this is Kong Moku's father, Kong Shantian. Snake Emperor said. Kong Moku's father? King of Gai's expression darkened. Since you know, come with me. Kong Shantian sneered. Come with you? King of Gai asked. There are two ways for an imperial dynasty to become a celestial dynasty. One is to snatch the heaven and earth karmic rank of a celestial dynasty. You came just in time. Come with me and let my son take your heaven and earth karmic rank. Kong Shantian said coldly. King of Gai said coldly, You? Kong Shantian seemed to have heard a joke. King of Gai, you're at the 10th level of the upper void stage, right? I went through the tribulation at the 10th level. I'm a mystic celestial. My strength is similar to the 12th level of the upper void stage. This is not your heaven and earth karmic dynasty. Can you escape here? If you don't want to suffer, surrender. Cough cough cough. Your Majesty. Snake Emperor looked anxious. Snake Emperor, you watch from the side. I'll do it. King of Gai said. Yes. Snake Emperor nodded with a complicated expression. It's useless to resist. Kong Shantian said coldly. King Guai narrowed his eyes and took out a huge coffin with a flip of his hand. It was the sky-burying coffin that rescued Miao. It was also the sky-burying coffin that Li Songhai used to break the seal in the celestial realm. As soon as the sky-burying coffin appeared, a ferocious aura of death spread out. Kong Shantian said coldly, Didn't you use this coffin against Yang Zigu? King of Gai did not say much. He controlled the huge sky-burying coffin and locked it on Kong Shantian. Kong Shantian sneered. Ah, a mortal's dharma treasure dares to embarrass yourself in front of me? World suppression. King of Gai shouted. Space cracks suddenly appeared around the sky-burying coffin, and they pressed down on Kong Shenshui with a wild force. Kong Shenshui struck his palm toward the sky. Bam! The palm seal shattered. Kong Shantian immediately noticed the abnormality of the coffin. However, he soon realized something was wrong. Boom! Kong Shenshui screamed as the sky-burying coffin crushed him. The immense power caused the earth to tremble once again. Under Snake Emperor's shocked gaze, King of Gai shrunk the sky-burying coffin and placed it on his palm. Only a pile of flesh was left on the ground. Kong Shantian, a mystic celestial, was killed by King of Gai's coffin? Just one blow? Just one blow? Your Majesty? Is this true? Snake Emperor rubbed his eyes and said in surprise. King of Gai nodded and said, That's right. The sky-burying coffin. I did not expect it to be a grand celestial artifact. A grand celestial artifact. Grand celestial artifact? That is a celestial artifact that is more powerful than a heaven immortal artifact. Snake Emperor said in surprise. King of Gai nodded and said with relief, Yes, no one expected the sky-burying coffin to be so powerful. With this coffin in hand, as long as we do not meet people like Jing Ming, we will be invincible in this realm. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Snake Emperor said with a smile. King of Gai nodded. Your Majesty, why did we leave so quickly just now? Since we have this coffin, we are not afraid of anyone. I thought Your Majesty was worried that there would be an accident and wanted to go back early. Snake Emperor was puzzled. King of Gai shook his head and said, I don't know why, but when I was facing Yan Chuan just now, the sky-burying coffin suddenly resisted, as if it wanted to escape from my control. This has never happened since the sky-burying coffin was unsealed. There are still many things about the sky-burying coffin that I have not figured out, so I did not take the risk. When it saw Yan Chuan, the sky-burying coffin resisted. Snake Emperor was surprised. Once Kong Shantian is dead, the Great Nightmare Dynasty and the Great Buddha Imperial Dynasty will not rest until one of us is dead. But it doesn't matter. Kong Mok? King of Gai said coldly. Your Majesty, with this coffin in hand, Kong Mok will not be able to get away with it. Snake Emperor said confidently. Let's go. King of Gai shook his head. The two of them flew towards the south. The news quickly spread to Yanjin. Yan Chuan had just received the congratulations from his officials when he received the news from the south. Kong Shintian? Kong Mok's father was killed by King of Gai's sky-burying coffin? With just one blow? Yan Chuan looked at the news in his hand. Chapter 1045. Dajin's Celestial Empire. The entire country was celebrating and the people of Yanjin were extremely excited. The emperor had transformed into a 1,000-foot giant to kill evil. When the deities descended, many cultivators saw the countless rays of light around the deities. They immediately recognized the deities after comparing them to the records. A large group of deities, had been driven away by the emperor. A cultivator with a good eye could see clearly that there was a hint of fear in the eyes of the deities. Even the deities were afraid of the emperor? Many people felt their blood boiling. They all felt fortunate to have settled in this celestial empire. The Dajin Celestial Empire was instantly recognized by all the people of Yanjin. The news quickly spread everywhere. While the entire country was celebrating, the official document of the grand examination hosted by the emperor in 10 years was quickly spread to all the cities in Yanjin. The emperor hosted it? The grand examination. The people of Dajin were instantly excited. The officials were busy. Yan Chuan was in the upper study reading the memorials. Kong Shintian? Kong Mok's father was killed by the sky-burying coffin? Just one attack. Yan Chuan looked at the information in his hand seriously. The Great Calamity Celestial Empire and the Great Buddha Imperial Empire are enemies. It's beneficial to our dynasty. Yi Feng said. But that sky-burying coffin is too powerful. Meng Wenrua said. Sky-burying coffin? Yan Chuan narrowed his eyes. In his previous life, he had obtained one when he opened the tomb of the deities. However, he did not have time to study it and only used it to bury his previous body. Alright, let's not think about this for now. Yi Feng. Yes, your majesty. The great Zhao sacred ground has collapsed. Quickly collect the 1,000 cities controlled by it. Yan Chuan said. Yes, your majesty. Yi Feng replied. When Ru'a, you will be in charge of the world examination this time. Spread the net all over the world. You must help me search for outstanding talents. Yan Chuan said solemnly. Yes, your majesty. Meng Wenruo replied. Other than the Julu Academy, they were the last middle-class sect in the East Divine Continent. Jin Dayu and Hua Guang once again led their troops forward. Along the way, all the inferior sects surrendered one after another. The sect leaders and elders all came out to welcome De Zhen's army. Wherever the imperial court's army went, no one dared to stop them. The army slowly gathered towards the last sect, the Heaven Lake sect. Outside the Heaven Lake sect, a strong gust of wind blew, causing the Hua and Jin flags to flutter in the wind. In the Heaven Lake sect, all the spell formations were activated. The ferocity of Bao Zhen's army had not been heard for a day or two. Sect leader, surrender. Sect leader, let's fight it out with them. Sect leader, another disciple escaped. The Heaven Lake sect was in a mess. The Heaven Lake sect master was so anxious that a few strands of his hair had turned white. He stood at the top of the main peak and looked at the two commanders in the distance. Guang Jin Dayu, do you really want to force the Heaven Lake sect into a dead end? The master of the Heaven Lake sect cried out in grief. Hua Guang and Jin Dayu looked at each other. To the east of the Heaven Lake sect is the ocean. To the south, west and north are all the territory of the De Zhen. The Heaven Lake sect is located in the hinterland of the De Zhen. How can we allow outsiders to sleep under our beds? Just like your Heaven Lake Mountain, if we set up a government office for the De Zhen, would you be willing? If you submit to the De Zhen will treat you well. Hua Guang shouted in a deep voice. Submit? The master of the Heaven Lake sect's expression was extremely ugly. Sect leader, forget it. It's the same even if we go to the De Zhen. Sect leader, a warrior prefers death to humiliation. Let's fight it out with them. The two voices put the master of the Heaven Lake sect in a difficult position. The master of the Heaven Lake sect was an extremely ambitious person. He even had the ambition to establish a holy land. Now they wanted him to submit to them? Even the great Zhao Holy Land was not so domineering back then. If he continued to fight, the Heaven Lake sect would only be annihilated. However, there was still a glimmer of hope. If he did not fight, he would not be satisfied. Just as the master of the Heaven Lake sect was in a difficult position, a figure flew over from the top of a mountain in the distance. It was a man in a green robe. He held a green feather fan in his hand and looked at the Heaven Lake sect with a cold gaze. Master Li, is everything settled? Huoguang smiled and asked. Yes, now only the Heaven Lake sect is left. Li Si smiled. Li Si's appearance was nothing to Huoguang. However, in the eyes of the Heaven Lake sect disciples, he was like a monstrous demon. Li Si? It's Li Si, the violent Zhen Li Si? The Li Si who killed millions of people? Ah, he's the Li Si who destroyed the Li family? The Li family? The Li family is here. In an instant, the Heaven Lake sect was in an uproar again. When they saw Huoguang and Jin Deyu, they still had the ambition to fight. However, when they saw Li Si, many of them collapsed because Li Si's methods were too cruel. Resist? Fine, if you resist, your entire family will be destroyed. Some of the cultivators were very hot-blooded and did not hesitate to sacrifice themselves. Therefore, when faced with a powerful cultivator like Huoguang, they were also prepared to sacrifice themselves. But what about Li Si? If you resist him, he will kill your wife and children, kill your parents, and even issue an arrest warrant for the whole world to hunt you down. Which hero could stand it? Even if they did not think for themselves, they had to think for their parents. When they thought of their wives and children being killed, when they thought of their children being killed, when they thought of their children and grandchildren being killed, the hearts of all the heroes turned cold. Master, let's surrender. Master, don't resist anymore. Master, my son is innocent. Master, you just had a grandson. Are you going to watch him die under a butcher's knife? The master of the Heaven Lake sect felt sad. His ambition could not withstand Li Si's command. Withdraw the formation and welcome the angel. The master of the Heaven Lake sect said gloomily. Long live the Holy One. Long live the Holy One. Long live the Holy One. Before the soldiers of the great Jin dynasty could react, the disciples of the Heaven Lake sect were already crying tears of joy and cheering. The master of the Heaven Lake sect was speechless. These fence-sitters fell too quickly. The two commanders looked at each other and finally looked at Li Si. Master Li, you're still the best. Jin Deyu laughed bitterly. They thought that there would be a fierce battle. They did not expect Li Si to scare the disciples of the Heaven Lake sect. Li Si was very satisfied. Boom boom boom. In the Heaven Lake sect, the fate energy rolled and flowed quickly towards the great Jin dynasty. Julu Academy. Behind Meng Ling Tian were 5 immortals. They looked towards the southeast. The 5 of them looked at each other and finally frowned. Other than the Julu Academy, all the sects in the East Divine Continent are almost unified. An immortal said with a complicated expression. Most importantly, how old is this Yan Chuan? Another immortal said with a complicated expression. How old? Everyone had seen Yan Chuan's information. 108 years old? 108 years old might be the limit for mortals. But for these immortals, it was just the time to play a game of chess or go into seclusion. And in this short period of time, all the major powers of the East Divine Continent had been wiped out. And Yan Chuan had risen from a mortal to an enemy of the entire world, laying down a huge foundation. Ambitious? Ambitious was not enough to describe Yan Chuan. The speed of his rise could only be described as shocking. Seniors? Meng Ling Tian frowned. One of the immortals shook his head and said, logically speaking, the Julu Academy is still allied with the great Jin dynasty. He won't attack us. Furthermore, the appearance of the Lotus God is also telling us something. Meng Ling Tian looked at the immortal. The appearance of the Lotus God is unavoidable in the immortal world. An unprecedented calamity is coming. It might even be as tragic as the great calamity of the Antiquity Age. The immortal said with an ugly expression. Ah. Although the great Jin dynasty rose quickly, they might not be able to withstand this calamity. We don't have to do anything for now. The Julu Academy has a foundation in the immortal world established by our founder, Dongfang Bubi. Let's wait and see. The immortal said in a low voice. Everyone nodded. Right, Meng Ling Tian, that girl Meng Rongrong's comprehension of the Tao of the Zither is too amazing. An immortal suddenly looked at Meng Ling Tian. Meng Ling Tian said bitterly, yes, even I can only reach the 3rd note of the 8 notes of the heavenly demon. She managed to connect them all in just a few decades. 8 notes? Ah. 8 notes of the heavenly demon? Ah, you're not the one teaching her now. She's the one teaching you. An immortal laughed. Meng Ling Tian smiled bitterly. I can only reach the 4th note of the 8 notes of the 8 notes of the heavenly demon. I can't go any further. Meng Ling Tian, why don't you help us ask? An immortal said with a smile. Meng Ling Tian shook his head. I did, but her theory overturns our previous methods. Oh. When I was teaching her, I told her that she had to sever her emotions in order to comprehend. But after she perfected it, she told me that I was wrong. She didn't have to sever her emotions. Instead, she had to reach the realm of grand oblivion. Grand oblivion? Isn't that just severing her emotions? No, oblivion isn't severing her emotions. It's a state of seeming emotions. Forgetting doesn't mean that they don't exist. Instead, it makes the emotions stronger and stronger. It becomes as deep as the sea and as deep as the sky. Forgetting and not forgetting are indistinguishable. This is grand oblivion. Meng Ling Tian explained. The group of immortals. The Great Jin Celestial Empire had almost unified the East Divine Continent. Like a plague, it spread rapidly in all directions. At the same time, under Yen Chuan's arrangements, Upper Void Realm experts led batches of Great Jin's recruitment officials to the various divine continents. They spread the news of the Great Jin Celestial Empire and recruited talents from all over the world. North Divine Continent. Pa. Yao Tianshang smashed a chair beside him. How ambitious of Yen Chuan to recruit examinees. He has even recruited all of us to the Northern Divine Continent. Yao Tianshang said with a hint of dissatisfaction. Ju boiled a pot of tea at the side. She was not angry but said quietly, "This Yen Chuan is so ambitious. Ju, you and I were at the 12th tier of the Upper Void Realm in our previous lives. As long as you recover your cultivation, you can become a heavenly immortal. That day Yang Zigu was at most a heavenly immortal. Yen Chuan might not be a match for us," Yao Tianshang said in a low voice. Ju shook her head slightly. "No, I'm not afraid of Yen Chuan. But our emperor dynasty is not as good as the Celestial Empire. We don't have many chances." Yao Tianshang narrowed his eyes and nodded. Not many chances. The chance for the emperor dynasty to ascend to the Celestial Empire was indeed not many. At least in this world there weren't many. Chapter 1046. 8 days of leave, 9 days of leave. Happy New Year. The Great Jin Celestial Empire's first world examination was open to all who were willing to become officials. The world was in an uproar when the news came out. Because the world's mindset was still stuck in the era of sects, they were still unfamiliar with the dynasty model. A sect model only recognized its own disciples. Outsiders were only allowed to be guests at most and were not allowed to interfere with the sect's activities. However, countries were different. The Great Jin Celestial Empire was even more accepting. As long as one had the ability and could contribute to the Great Jin Celestial Empire, the Great Jin Celestial Empire would recognize them and be willing to let them take charge and participate in the decision-making of the Great Jin Celestial Empire. In an instant, countless cultivators flocked to the Great Jin Celestial Empire. Yen Chuan was also preparing for the world examination in Yen capital. In the Chaotian Palace, during the morning assembly. Wenrua, it will definitely be crowded. You will set the agenda and make the first batch of eliminations. Yen Chuan said to Meng Wenrua. Yes, Your Majesty. Meng Wenrua nodded. Just as Yen Chuan nodded, the Great Jin Celestial Empire's providence cloud suddenly churned. Yen Chuan's expression changed. He slowly stood up. Everyone in the hall was puzzled. Yen Chuan slowly stepped down from the dragon altar and walked out of the Chaotian Palace. The officials in the Chaotian Palace were curious. They followed behind Yen Chuan and slowly walked out. Standing in the square of the Chaotian Palace, Yen Chuan looked at the providence cloud. Then Yen Chuan turned to the west. Your Majesty, something big happened in the west? Yifeng asked curiously. A celestial empire was born in the west. Yen Chuan said solemnly. Celestial Empire? The Great Buddha Empire? Yifeng's face sank. That's right, it's the Great Buddha Empire. Kongmok? Haha, it's really like drinking poison to quench thirst. Yen Chuan sighed. Yifeng and the others thought for a while and immediately understood. Kongmok severed one of his arms. Did he seize the karmic position of heaven and earth of the 10,000 Buddha's holy ground? Meng Wenrua's expression changed. Rabbits don't eat the grass near their burrows. Kong Mo may be useless in external affairs, but he is ruthless in internal affairs. Li Si sighed. Your Majesty? With the sudden change in the West, should our Great Jin plan? Yifeng asked. There's no need for that. The West, the Great Buddha Celestial Dynasty? We have long made arrangements. The most important thing now is still the world examination. Yen Chuan said solemnly. The West had already made arrangements? Yifeng, Li Si and Meng Wenrua were all astonished. The three of them were all extremely capable. They knew about the relationship between the Great Buddha Empire and the Great Buddha Empire. Hence, they understood that it was impossible for them to infiltrate the great Buddha Empire. However, the emperor said that he had already made arrangements. The three of them looked on in admiration. The West. Great Buddha Celestial Empire. Long live the Holy One. Long live the Holy One. The officials of the great Buddha Empire cheered excitedly. On the huge dragon platform, Kong Moku looked at the officials with great satisfaction. Ah, you may rise. Kong Moku laughed. Thank you, Your Majesty. The officials congratulated him. From today onward, the city of 10,000 Buddhas will be the capital of the great Buddha Empire. Kong Moku said loudly. Yes. The officials congratulated him. In the distance, at the peak of a mountain, Kong Daoqiu, a group of Confucian scholars and monks looked ahead. The eyes of the group of monks were filled with resentment, but they were also filled with helplessness. Kong Daoqiu's expression was ugly. The four immortals behind him also had complicated expressions. Kong Daoqiu, why did you let him? An immortal said with a complicated expression. What's done can't be undone. Instead of losing the karmic ranking, why don't we just give it to him? Kong Daoqiu said with an ugly expression. The group of immortals felt bitter. The 10,000 Buddhas' sacred ground. It took us so much effort to cultivate it, but that bastard Kong Moku stole it. Kong Moku doesn't have the ability to deal with the outer sections. He specialized in stealing from the inner sections. Kong Moku? We might have been wrong about him back then. Forget it. The old ancestor has tacitly agreed. Let's see how he develops. The immortals were dissatisfied with Kong Moku. Kong Daoqiu frowned and thought about it. In the end he said nothing and led everyone back. In the distance, Kong Moku slowly looked over from the dragon throne in the great Buddha Empire. After everyone left, Kong Moku heaved a sigh of relief. Prophet, it's all thanks to you that the great Buddha's advancement this time. Of course I won't forget you. From today onwards, the Prophet Buddha will be conferred the title of first-class prophet. He will be rewarded with 10 ninth-tier magic treasures and 100 celestial stones. Kong Moku rewarded. Thank you, Your Majesty. The Prophet Buddha said bitterly. The Prophet Buddha was helpless against betraying the Buddhist sect. The great Buddha has just been decided. Dear officials, do you have any suggestions for the future of the great Buddha? Kong Moku looked at the officials and asked. The officials fell silent. Suddenly, at the end of the line, a man stepped out and said, I have something to report. Feng Xiao? Kong Moku frowned and looked at the official at the end of the line. Feng Xiao was the grandson of the Dai sect, the original sect leader of Yan Chuan's father, Feng Tairan. After his father, Feng Tianyu, committed suicide, he left the Dai sect and never returned. He had been a wastrel, and now he was an official of the great Buddha Empire, although he was at the very end. Kong Moku still looked at Feng Xiao with suspicion. I know that Your Majesty has some great enemies, but I feel that our great Buddha Empire needs to unite the West Divine Continent as soon as possible and use the power of the Divine Continent to fight the world. Feng Xiao said. Kong Moku thought that Feng Xiao would advise him to deal with Yan Chuan. He did not expect Feng Xiao to say this. The Prophet Buddha did not trust Feng Xiao, but after thinking about it he finally nodded. Because Feng Xiao's words were the best decision. Your Majesty, official Feng's words are exactly what I think. Only when the great Buddha Empire is strong can we fight all enemies. The Prophet Buddha said. Kong Moku nodded and looked at Feng Xiao with suspicion. The great Buddha Empire's promotion made all the experts in the world feel that something was wrong. In the North Divine Continent, Zhu and Yao Tianshang stepped out of the palace and looked to the southwest. In the South Divine Continent, King Gai stepped out of the palace and looked to the northwest. In the Central Divine Continent, Meng Sanxing stroked the primordial gourd and looked to the west with narrowed eyes. In the Julu Academy, Meng Lingtian and the others also looked to the west with serious expressions. In a valley, the emperor sat cross-legged on a large rock. 12 disciples stood respectfully in front of him. The emperor suddenly looked to the west and then to the east. He frowned slightly. Master, the young 8 sabers. We have already grasped all of them. A disciple said with a smile. The emperor turned his head and looked at the disciples. Master left 10 sabers on the back mountain. Study them well. Master will return in a few years. The emperor said in a low voice. Yes, the 12 disciples answered. The emperor stepped into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. After the emperor left, the 12 disciples seemed to be relieved. Why hasn't Master smiled before? A female disciple asked curiously. How would I know? However, even though the heroes of the present age have been bragged about, no one can compare to Master. A disciple said proudly. Nonsense. Who doesn't know that it's our fortune to be able to become Master's disciple? What's Master's cultivation base now? Master might be at the perfection upper void stage. 12th level upper void stage. Of course. Otherwise, how could he have killed a human immortal with one saber? Everyone nodded. Right, Master only left 10 sabers. Could it be? A disciple said with a frown. It's not like you don't know Master's saber technique. Although we were born with the saber physique, we are still far from Masters. Master said that 10 sabers are enough for us to learn for a while. Must be a while. Learn well and cherish it. Yes, eldest senior brother, the group answered. East Divine Continent, Yen Capital. In the upper study room. Tan Lang was the only one standing in front of Yen Chuan. Tan Lang, you and Huo Guang already call each other brothers? Yen Chuan said with a smile. Tan Lang used to be a wolf child. He was rescued by Yen Chuan and Huo Guang and taken in as a disciple by Huo Guang. He was loyal to Yen Chuan. Yes, eldest brother asked for it. But in my heart, no matter how I address you, His Majesty and eldest brother are the people I respect the most in my life. Tan Lang said solemnly. Yes, I've already asked Huo Guang to relieve you of your military position. Yen Chuan nodded. His Majesty, is it because I didn't do well? I'll definitely change. Tan Lang panicked. Yen Chuan shook his head and said, No, I relieved you of your military position because there's a more important thing for you to do. Yes, His Majesty, please instruct me. I want you to search the world for 3,000 children with excellent physiques and bones to cultivate a group of personal guards for me. They will also be my trump card. They will only have one belief, and that is to be loyal to Dezhen. Yen Chuan said solemnly. Personal guards? Tan Lang's expression changed. You'll be the leader of the personal guards. Remember, you'll only be responsible to me for these 3,000 personal guards. I've already told Huo Guang that he won't ask you. As the leader of these 3,000 personal guards, they will be my killing weapon, the strongest killing weapon. Yen Chuan said in a deep voice. Tan Lang's expression changed and he immediately understood. Yes, Your Majesty. This subject will definitely train a peerless killing machine for Your Majesty. Their goal is to remove all obstacles for Your Majesty. They live and die for Your Majesty. They are His Majesty's personal guards. His Majesty, why don't we call the personal guards the Terracotta Army? Tan Lang asked. Yen Chuan was slightly surprised but finally nodded and said, All right. I'll do my best. I beseech His Majesty to equip the Terracotta Army with the strongest weapons. Of course. When I enter the heavenly secret realm in the next dream, these 3,000 terracotta soldiers will follow me into the heavenly secret realm. Yes. Tan Lang replied. Tan Lang went to the 4 directions to prepare the terracotta army for Yen Chuan. However, Meng Wenrua and Yi Feng brought a new piece of news. His Majesty. A person has appeared after the selection of the heavenly secret realm. Yi Feng smiled and said. Yen Chuan was slightly curious. Does His Majesty still remember Jin Deyu's sect, the Great Winged Heaven School? His Majesty used spiritual stones to move the entire Great Winged Heaven School. The Great Collapse Plan was like a tsunami that destroyed the Great Winged Heaven School? Yi Feng smiled and said. How was it? At that time, there was a person who saw through His Majesty's plan. Later on, we tricked him and forced him to leave. His Majesty has been looking for that person, but he was nowhere to be found. Today Lord Meng and I met him. Yi Feng smiled and said. In Hentian? Yen Chuan's expression changed. Although he had only heard of this person, Yen Chuan still remembered him clearly. It could be said that this person had seen through the Great Collapse Plan early on. Unfortunately, after this person was expelled from the Great Winged Heaven School, his whereabouts were unknown. This made Yen Chuan feel regretful. Yes, this person is also participating in the heavenly secret realm. Chapter 1047. In Hentian? Yes, this person is also participating in this year's examination. A light flashed in Yen Chuan's eyes. Although he wasn't clear about In Hentian's ability, he knew that he was the only one out of hundreds of millions of people who saw through the collapse plan. How could Yen Chuan not be excited? Your Majesty, do you wish to see him? Yi Feng asked with a smile. No need. Since I am the host of the examination, I naturally have to uphold justice for the great Jin Empire. Since he is here, it is enough. Yen Chuan shook his head. Yes, Your Majesty. Yi Feng nodded. Other than In Hentian, many talents have come from all over the world. Southern Divine Continent, West Divine Continent, Central Divine Continent, and North Divine Continent. Many of the recorded talents have abandoned their respective divine continents to come to the East Divine Continent. Yi Feng said excitedly. The heroes of the world are all in my grasp. Yan Xuan sighed, his eyes filled with emotion. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Everyone bowed. Yan Xuan tapped his dragon throne lightly. After some thought, he said, the examination is not just about these talents. It is also about the great Jin Empire. After Yan Xuan finished speaking, Yi Feng, Li Si, Meng Wenrua, and the others all raised their eyebrows. Your Majesty, are you worried that the experts of the various divine continents will come to disrupt the examination? Li Si raised an eyebrow. Yan Xuan nodded lightly. West Divine Continent. Kong Lu Academy. Kong Daoqiu stood at the peak of the academy, looking at the great Buddha Celestial Empire in the distance with a complicated expression. Kong Daoqiu held a bamboo scroll with the words Spring and Autumn written on it, his eyes narrowed. In the day when the great Buddha Celestial Empire was established, a group of immortals from the Kong family had scolded Kong Mok, but Kong Daoqiu had suppressed them. On the surface, Kong Daoqiu supported Kong Mok, but in his heart he was filled with doubts. Just like that, Kong Daoqiu stood from night to dawn. For the entire night, Kong Daoqiu's expression kept changing. It was only when the first ray of the morning sun that Kong Daoqiu's face turned resolute. Stepping forward, Kong Daoqiu flew to a valley in the distance. It was a forbidden ground for the Kong family. Even the immortals of the Kong family. Kong Daoqiu landed at the mouth of the valley. Daoqiu requesting an audience. Kong Daoqiu said. There was no response from the valley, but Kong Daoqiu wasn't in a hurry. He waited patiently for 2 hours before a voice could be heard. Kong Daoqiu? Hadn't the Lotus Goddess been forced out of this world? Daoqiu Li Daoqiu. 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 Oh. Old ancestor, Kong Mok stole the karmic position of heaven and earth of the thousand Buddhas' holy ground and established the great Buddha Celestial Empire. This is an act that will bring disaster to the Kong family. Please give the order for the Kong family to step in and take down the great Buddha Celestial Empire. Kong Daoqiu said solemnly. The elder ancestor's surprised voice came from the valley. Old ancestor Kong Mok is too reliant on the clan. However, he is cold-blooded by nature and has a tendency to backfire. The myriad Buddha holy ground is an example of this. Kong Daoqiu said solemnly. Backlash nature? Daoqiu, you worry too much. Kong Mok is the descendant of the Kong family. Didn't the all Buddha's holy ground nurture him into a karmic rank of heaven and earth so that the Kong family could use him? Back then, it was precisely for this purpose. Why would there be a backlash? The old ancestor said in a deep voice. Old ancestor, the difference is that the all Buddha's holy ground has become a part of the Kong family after all these years of governance. It is a flexible arm that listens to the Kong family's orders. However, this arm should not be removed by Kong Mok. If he had the ability, he could have gone to the other holy grounds to fight for it. Why would he remove our own arm? Compared to Daoqiu's grandson, the difference between the two is too great. Kong Daoqiu advised. Yan Xuan? He is just an outsider. The old ancestor said in a deep voice. But half of his blood runs in the Kong family. Old ancestor, I wonder if you have heard of rare goods worth hoarding? Yan Xuan is that rare good while Kong Mok is just an ordinary good. Why would we let go of the rare good and protect the ordinary good? The value of rare goods is constantly rising. No matter how much the ordinary good is praised, they are still worthless. Old ancestor, it is not too late to cripple Kong Mok. Kong Daoqiu shouted. Enough. The old ancestor's impatient voice suddenly sounded. Kong Daoqiu stopped talking. You were the one who presided over the crown prince selection. Are you going back on your word now? The old ancestor said in a deep voice. Kong Daoqiu's expression turned ugly. Back then, my daughter should have been the first choice for the crown prince selection. If my daughter Susu was still alive, it would only be a matter of time before she became the new crown prince. Unfortunately, Susu was too devoted to her feelings. She married Yen Tao and got pregnant. She voluntarily gave up the crown prince selection. Old ancestor, you know how capable Susu is. When she was alive, Kong Mok was no match for her. Susu voluntarily gave up the crown prince selection, and Kong Mok took advantage of it, but he was unwilling to let Susu go. Old ancestor, Susu gave up everything, but you listened to Kong Mok and his son's slanderous words and told Daoqiu not to interfere. When Susu was forced to death by Kong Mok, Daoqiu suffered silently for the sake of the family. I gave everything to the family, but now Kong Mok is indeed useless. Old ancestor, Daoqiu does not want to make the same mistake again. Impudent. The old ancestor's cold voice came from the valley. Are you blaming me? The old ancestor asked coldly. Daoqiu does not dare. Kong Daoqiu lowered his head. If you don't dare? I see that you are getting bolder and bolder. I know that Kong Susu's death has troubled you, but Kong Susu was disobedient and betrayed the family. She deserved to be killed. As for Kong Mok, I am very satisfied that he established the Heavenly Empire. Don't bother about this matter in the future. Alright, you can go back. The old ancestor said coldly. Kong Daoqiu looked at the valley and a bitter smile appeared on his face. Yes. Kong Daoqiu left, and a few days later he went to the great Buddha dynasty again. The Prophet Buddha received him. The Prophet Buddha was no longer in the 10,000 Buddha's holy ground, and his name no longer existed. He was now the great Buddha dynasty's first-class prophet. Greetings, family head Kong. The prophet said solemnly. Zhao Xianji, where is Kong Mok? Kong Daoqiu asked solemnly. His Majesty is in seclusion. Does family head Kong have any instructions for me? The Prophet Buddha smiled. Kong Daoqiu looked at Zhao Xianji, and a cold sneer appeared on his face. Prophet Buddha, I really didn't expect that the 10,000 Buddha's holy ground would be destroyed in your hands. Zhao Xianji's face twitched, and a trace of sadness and helplessness could be seen on his face. Family head Kong has misunderstood. The 10,000 Buddha's holy ground's fate has come to an end. This one does not have the ability to do so. You don't have the ability? Kong Daoqiu sneered. Zhao Xianji frowned and his expression turned ugly. Just as he was about to say something, Kong Daoqiu interrupted him. Alright, I don't want to talk nonsense with you. When the 10,000 Buddha's holy ground was first established, there was a Buddha Sarira. This Sarira was the foundation of the 10,000 Buddha's holy ground. Before my Kong family entered this world, it was the source of Buddhism. Although the 10,000 Buddha's holy ground was under my Kong family's control, my Kong family had never touched the Buddha Sarira. This was to prevent Buddhism from being led astray by my Kong family. Now that the 10,000 Buddha's holy ground is no more, hand over the Buddha Sarira. At the very least, we can create another Buddhism holy ground. Kong Daoqiu said solemnly. What? Buddha prophet, you're going to betray Buddhism and you're going to betray it completely? You're even going to extinguish the Buddhism holy ground? Kong Daoqiu asked solemnly. Zhao Xianji's expression changed. In the end, he said solemnly, since the Kong family doesn't want to mess with Goddess Jichen's wishes, then don't have any ideas about the Buddha Sarira. Kong Daoqiu's expression turned cold. The Buddha Sarira had already disappeared into the horizon when the 10,000 Buddha's holy ground collapsed. It's no longer in our hands. Zhao Xianji shook his head. Is that so? Kong Daoqiu asked coldly. Yes. Zhao Xianji said firmly. Kong Daoqiu looked at Zhao Xianji coldly for a while, then flicked his sleeves and left with a cold snort. Watching Kong Daoqiu leave, Zhao Xianji's expression was complicated. After all, Zhao Xianji was once a devout Buddhism holy ground disciple, but today he had come to this point. Zhao Xianji shook his head bitterly. In the great Buddha dynasty, inside a secret chamber in the 10,000 Buddha's palace. The secret chamber was surrounded by all kinds of restrictions and formations to prevent the aura of the secret chamber from leaking. In the secret chamber, a fist-sized golden stone was placed in front of Kong Mok. The golden stone emitted a gentle golden light, and on the surface of the golden light, there were many golden swastikas. They were faintly discernible and the Buddhist aura lingered. Buddha Sarira? It had already been half a year, but he was still unable to assimilate it? Humph, since I can't refine you completely, I'll break you apart and refine you piece by piece. Kong Mok's eyes flashed with a hint of savagery. Boom, boom, boom. Kong Moku attacked fiercely, continuously shattering the swastika golden pattern. This lasted for 3 whole days. Crack. A crack suddenly appeared on the Buddha's Sarira. Oh. The countless swastikas from the Buddhist relic rapidly rushed towards the crack as though they were trying to block it. However, a gentle white light emitted from the crack. The moment the white light appeared, it constantly melted the swastikas. The number of swastikas continued to decrease as they were melted away by the white light. Kong Mok looked at this scene with a complicated expression, as though he suddenly realized that something was wrong. The countless swastikas slowly condensed into the light figure of a bald Buddha. In the light figure, The bald Buddha had a sorrowful expression as he looked at the Buddha's sarira. In the end he revealed a bitter expression. "You are the Buddha?" Kong Mok looked at the light figure in shock. The light figure turned to look at Kong Mok and smiled bitterly. "Ah, fate. This lord used all his cultivation to seal this white lotus. Who would have thought that it would be broken by you, and the calamity of the world would come again? So, today I will be destroyed. I only hope that everyone in the world can live with their lives." Boom. The light figure had just finished speaking when it suddenly exploded. In the blink of an eye, not even a speck of dust was left. In its original place, a pure white and delicate little lotus flower had appeared. The white lotus flower emitted a soft white light, illuminating the entire secret room in circles. Looking at it felt like a dream. "I am back again. To think that it is still this world. Interesting." Suddenly a chuckle came from the white lotus. The white lotus spoke. Kong Mok's expression changed. "Who are you?" "I am the lotus deity. Brat, do you want endless, boundless strength?" A faint bewitching voice came from the white lotus. "Lotus deity?" A few years ago, the myriad wonders demonic lotus that possessed Mohina Dojin and Yangzigu had connected to the lotus deity's voice. This was the voice of the lotus deity. The lotus deity descended once again. Chapter 1048. Great Buddha Dynasty Million Buddha City? Inside the palace's secret chamber, Kong Mok looked at the pure white lotus in front of him, and his expression flickered. Lotus God. Kong Mok sucked in a breath of cold air. Last time, Kong Mok didn't go, but he knew that the heroes of the world had surrounded the Lotus God. The Lotus God, as a puppet, had defeated almost all of them. Kong Mok's memory of the Lotus God was still fresh. "Kid, do you want endless power?" The Lotus God's voice came from the white lotus. The Lotus God did not rush him, and he waited patiently. The 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus exuded a nefarious aura, but this white lotus doesn't. "Are you that Lotus God?" Kong Mok frowned and asked. 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus? How can the 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus compare to this white lotus? The 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus is something I casually made. Of course, this white lotus is also something I casually made, but it's 10 times more exquisite than the 10,000 Wonders demonic lotus. Do you know what 10 times means? The Lotus God said calmly. What? With the same physique, the white lotus can allow me to instill 10 times more energy into you than the black lotus. The Lotus God said calmly. 10 times? That day all the experts in the world added together could not compare to Yangzigu. Now, on the basis of Yangzigu's strength, it could increase by 10 times? Kong Mok's breathing quickened. However, Kong Mok also understood that the Lotus deity was a huge disaster. Even the Kong family's old ancestor was wary of it. Wanting this power was equivalent to going against the world? I've seen you before. The first time was at the Great Revelation Holy Ground. You led a group of people to the Great Revelation Holy Ground, intending to subdue the Great Revelation Holy Ground, but in the end you returned empty-handed? The Lotus God tempted. The moment the Lotus God spoke, Kong Mok's face sank. Returned empty-handed? More than that, it could be said that the last 2 times Kong Mok roamed the world, he was trampled by the experts of the world. The first time, the Great Revelation Holy Ground, Feng Yinyang, Yao Tianshang, Mohina Dojin, Yan Chuan, Meng Ziqiu and Huang. The second time, the Archaic Mysteries Sect, Yan Chuan, Zhu, Renshu, Dongfang Jingpai and the ministers of Dajin. Even his own father had been killed by King Yu Gai. Sacrificing himself for others and severing the White Lotus connection with the Lotus God for the world? Was this a joke? Kong Mok greets Senior Lotus God. Many thanks to Senior for valuing Mok. Kong Mok immediately said respectfully. Aha, alright, I'll give you boundless power. Let you stand at the top of the world. Let all living beings in the world bow before you. Lotus God smiled. Bus. The white lotus trembled slightly before it slowly flew toward Kong Mok. It entered Kong Mok's body. Kong Mok's body suddenly emitted a white light. The white lotus baptized Kong Mok's body again and again. Gradually, a white lotus appeared above Kong Mok's head. The lotus slowly rotated, releasing a gentle light. The southern divine continent had suffered a great tragedy. The imperial capital, Wei City. In the imperial court of Wei City. Your Majesty, reports have come in from all over the southern divine continent. Large numbers of talents have been sent away to the east divine continent in batches. Li Tsanghai stepped forward and reported. Your Majesty, Dajin's actions are too overbearing. Not only did they recruit people from the east divine continent in a single examination, They even extended their hands to the southern divine continent. Another minister said in a low voice. The ministers were indignant. On the dragon throne, King Yu Gai wore a flat imperial crown and a dragon robe. His skeletal fingers extended from his sleeves and gently tapped the armrest of the dragon throne. Li Songhai. King Yu Gai said in a low voice. Yes. Why did Dajin almost unify the East Divine Continent in such a short time? Why is your progress so slow when I assigned you to manage the Southern Divine Continent? The vast Southern Divine Continent only occupies a third of the continent? King Yu Gai asked in a low voice. Li Songhai's expression turned ugly, but he still said, Your Majesty, please forgive me. This is the Yang realm. Most of the high-ranking officials and generals of the Great Tragedy Heaven are dead spirits. Using dead spirits to control living beings has caused great resistance in the hearts of living beings. That is why our progress has been slow. Furthermore, this world has returned to the immortal world. We have no dead spirits to replenish our ranks, so our expansion has been slower. Prut. King Yu Gai said in a low voice. Secondly, in order to break open the gates to the immortal world, I sacrificed many experts of the Southern Divine Continent. I made a mistake. Although I killed many experts of the Southern Divine Continent and reduced the resistance of expanding our territory, I lost the hearts of the people because of this. I could not be like the East Divine Continent, where I could conquer 100 territories just by subduing a sect leader. The Great Tragedy Heaven dynasty subdued 100 cities after subduing a large number of sect leaders. We could not subdue their plans. Furthermore, there was a natural barrier between living beings and dead spirits. It was difficult to subdue them. We could only subdue the Southern Divine Continent with subduing the Great Tragedy Heaven dynasty with subduing the Great Tragedy Heaven dynasty with subduing a continent with subduing the Great Tragedy Heaven dynasty much faster than us. Li Songhai sighed softly. King Yu Gai's fingers tapped lightly on the dragon throne. Cough, 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 cough. Suddenly, a series of coughs could be heard from the ministers. Your Majesty. The Snake Emperor stepped forward. Oh. Cough, 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 Your Majesty. You don't have to be troubled. Although the Great Perfection Examination is to search for talents, it is to seek the path of annihilation. The Snake Emperor said as he coughed. Seek the path of annihilation? Li Songhai was slightly taken aback. Then his eyes lit up. Your Majesty, the Great Perfection Examination this time is too overbearing. Searching for talents in the world? How can the heroes of the various continents be allowed to do as they wish? The slightest mistake will cause the Great Perfection's reputation to crumble. The Snake Emperor said solemnly. I agree. Li Songhai immediately smiled. King Yu Gai nodded and said, You are right. Haha, the examination of the world? On the day of the examination, I will go and take back the talents of the Southern Divine Continent. The Northern Divine Continent. The Yao Imperial Dynasty. In the study, Zhu and Yao Tianshang sat on the main seats. A group of important ministers of the Yao Imperial Dynasty stood below them. Your Majesty, Yao Tianshang, the Great Perfection Examination has kidnapped many talents from the Northern Divine Continent this time. Spider King said with a frown. Yao Tianshang frowned slightly and said, What is Yan Chuan doing? Does he want to make the entire world his enemy? Zhu thought for a moment. He took a deep breath and said, Yun Exin? The former sect leader of the Archaic Mysteries sect, Yun Exin, frowned slightly and said, Your Majesty, the Archaic Mysteries sect once promised that they would not calculate the Great Perfection Examination for 1,000 years. Your Majesty, please? All right. When the time comes we will go and take a look. The examination of the Great Perfection Examination? This Yan Chuan is so bold. Zhu said in a low voice. Yes. Yun Exin nodded. The Western Divine Continent. Kong Daoqiu held a document in his hand. He stood at the highest peak of the Confucius Lu Academy and looked to the east. The examination of the world? Kong Daoqiu frowned. After a moment of silence, Kong Daoqiu took a deep breath and said, How bold! The fish dragon transformation? If he passes he will prosper. If he fails he will fall. Yan Chuan? You are even bolder than Susu back then. Sai, why can't the old ancestor accept Yan Chuan? If the Kong family gets this child and borrows the Kong family's power, they will be able to rule the world in less than 1,000 years. Kong Daoqiu sighed. The Great Buddha Heavenly Empire, the city of 10,000 Buddhas. Evil arts? Stealing images means death in 21 days? Kong Mok looked to the east and frowned. That's right. But you can try your luck. Perhaps this will be the end of the Great Perfection. The lotus god's voice came from Kong Mok's body. Kong Mok's expression changed. No need. Wait for me to become stronger first. Wait for me to become stronger, then I will go. Kong Mok shook his head. Ah. The lotus god's voice revealed a trace of satisfaction. Kong Mok was inferior to Yen Chuan because of this. Although he was born noble, his courage was far inferior to Yen Chuan's. It was precisely because he lacked this courage that he was the puppet that the lotus god wanted the most. The Middle Divine Continent. Meng Sanxing carried a huge gourd on his back and looked to the east with a complicated expression. Then Meng Sanxing's expression turned serious. In a valley in the Middle Divine Continent, the emperor returned and looked at his 12 disciples. Master, we have fully comprehended the 10 slashes. One of the disciples shouted excitedly. The emperor looked at them and took a deep breath. Settle your affairs. In 3 days, follow me to the East Divine Continent. After this, we will go to the Celestial World. The Celestial World? Everyone's expression suddenly brightened. A girl who was more sensitive asked, Master, why are we going to the East Divine Continent? Is there anything important? The emperor's expression suddenly changed, and his eyes flashed with a complicated expression. Is Master going to meet someone? The female disciple asked again. Master's enemy? The emperor said in a deep voice. Master's enemy? The 12 disciples' expressions suddenly became serious. Master, don't worry. We will do our best to kill the enemy for Master. The 12 disciples immediately expressed their attitude. The emperor frowned and said irritably, It's none of your business. The 12 disciples were slightly stunned. They were at a loss. Master's enemy? Why would revenge make Master so irritated? Yes. The 12 disciples said no more. 10 years seemed to be a long time, but for these cultivators, it was a blink of an eye. 9th of September. Great Jin Celestial Empire, Yanjing Chaotian Palace. Long live His Majesty. The ministers bowed respectfully. Yen Chuan wore a black jade crown and a black golden dragon robe as he overlooked the ministers in the palace. Meng Wenrua stepped forward. Reporting to His Majesty, we have already done a preliminary selection for this examination. Outside the Chaotian Palace, there are a total of 500,000 outstanding talents waiting for His Majesty to decide. Meng Wenrua said solemnly. Yen Chuan looked at Meng Wenrua and nodded. Wenrua, you have worked hard this time. Such a huge project was completed in a short 10 years. I'm very pleased. His Majesty is too kind. This is my job. Meng Wenrua immediately said. Well then follow me to see these 500,000 outstanding talents. Yen Chuan smiled with satisfaction. Yen Chuan stood up and walked down the dragon platform. He slowly walked toward the entrance of the Chaotian Palace. The ministers followed behind and slowly walked out of the main hall. Soon they reached the entrance of the Chaotian Palace. Yen Chuan stood at the front and the ministers lined up behind him. Standing at the entrance of the Chaotian Palace, Yen Chuan looked at the vast square in front of him. 500,000 people filled up the vast square. Some had weapons on their backs, some had clothes that fluttered in the wind. All kinds of people were lined up in an orderly manner. Seeing Yen Chuan step forward, almost everyone showed a trace of worship. After all, Yen Chuan had conquered the Nuo River in a short 100 years. Not to mention that there would be no one in the future, at least no one in the past. Greetings to His Majesty. Long live His Majesty. The 500,000 outstanding talents all congratulated. Chapter 1049. Greetings, Your Majesty. May Your Majesty live for 10,000 years. The 500,000 candidates who had passed the preliminary round bowed respectfully. Yen Chuan stood at the entrance of the skyward hall and looked at the 500,000 candidates. Yen Chuan's heart skipped a beat as if he had sensed something. This feeling was similar to when Li Si bowed to him in the past. Yen Chuan cautiously scanned everyone's body once again. This feeling again? When Li Si bowed to me it happened too. Could it be someone I knew in my past life? Yen Chuan guessed. Soon. I have a feeling that when I reach the immortal realm, I will be able to unlock all the memories of my past life. Although I don't know much about it now, since you have entered the Great Jin, I believe that you must be a genius. Yen Chuan thought to himself. Hua Guang, Yifeng, Jin Dayu, Meng Wenrua, Li Si, Bai Ditian, and the other officials of the Great Jin Empire all looked at Yen Chuan. The 500,000 candidates also looked at Yen Chuan. Even the people of Yanjing stopped what they were doing and paid attention to the day's event. Countless candidates who had been screened out and countless experts who had rushed over from all over the world were staring at the square of the skyward hall. They were all looking at Yan Xuan. They were waiting for Yan Xuan. Yan Xuan looked at the examinees again and took a deep breath. The Great Celestial Empire's first world examination begins today. I am very pleased to see all of you. Thank you for your trust in the Great Jin Empire. In this examination, there will be a top scholar in both the civil and martial sciences. Because this is the first examination, in addition to the original promise, I will also give the top scholar the position of army commander. I hope that all of you will do your best. Yan Xuan said loudly. Army commander? Everyone's expression suddenly changed. The officials and citizens of the Great Jin Empire were all shocked. A legion commander wasn't an official position or a noble title. However, this title alone was much more coveted than an official position or a noble title. This was because every legion commander was viewed by Yan Xuan as a pillar of support for Dezhen. Until now, there were countless officials and noble titles in the Great Jin Empire, but there were only 4 army commanders. Would the top scholar in this examination become an army commander? The 500,000 candidates had studied the Great Jin Empire's official system before. Zhang's army commander. Army commanders for army commander. Army Yan Xuan? Yan Xuan said, Army! Exclamation point. The 500,000 candidates were Army Commander Wang. There were 250,000 of the two each. After Yan Xuan, a large number of Dezhen guards quickly set up the tables for the literary examinees. On the tables were the 4 treasures of the study. Fong art is his Ming the thousand y the is number army 1,000 candidates and 1,000. That is the and it is that the is who. Everyone's expression suddenly changed. He looked at Yan Xuan in surprise. The topic of the policy discussion was unifying the world? Many examinees took a deep breath, but most of them were agitated. This was ambition. Only by following such an emperor would they be able to fulfill their ambitions. Yes. 250,000 examinees replied in unison. Then they quickly ground the ink stick and started to think. The candidates for the written exam began to write, and the people of Yanjing were filled with pride. The examinees of the combat examination were also looking at Yan Xuan. Yan Xuan did not choose the examinees based on their strength. Instead, he chose the examinees based on their willpower, development potential, combat potential, and ability to lead troops. There were more than 200,000 examinees, from the upper ethereal realm to the Qi realm. Just as Yan Xuan was looking at the candidates for the combat examination. Haha, unify the world? Yendi, what a big tone. A loud shout suddenly came from the south of Yanjing. The moment he shouted, the expressions of the countless cultivators in the surroundings changed. Someone came to cause trouble? Almost everyone in Yanjing looked up. However, many examinees in the Chaotian Palace Square turned a deaf ear and continued to think about the questions. Yan Xuan looked over and saw a black wind coming from the south. Billowing flames were rushing towards him. Hundreds of cultivators were caught in the black wind. The 2 people at the front were the King of Gaio and the Snake Emperor of the Southern Divine Continent. King of Gaio? Yan Xuan said in a low voice. The 2 emperors looked at each other coldly. Cough, cough, cough. Greetings, Your Majesty. The Snake Emperor said. The moment the Snake Emperor spoke, Bai Ditian also said, Snake Emperor, King of Gaio, when you were trapped in the death trap, it was Yan Xuan who saved you. What? Are the 2 of you here to cause trouble for the Great Jin examination? Bai Ditian's face darkened. Bai Ditian was very clear about kindness and hatred. Now that the 2 people he had saved were provoking him, he was very angry. The moment Bai Ditian spoke, the Snake Emperor frowned. He did not know what to say. Yan Xuan waved his hand and asked Bai Ditian not to speak. Bai Ditian frowned and nodded. King of Gaio, what are you doing here? Yan Xuan said plainly. Yan Xuan, I do not want to be your enemy in this battle. I do not care about your world examination. However, the people that the Southern Divine Continent took away must be returned to me. I only want the people of the Southern Divine Continent. King of Gaio said in a low voice. The moment King of Gaio spoke, the faces of the group of candidates in the skyward hall darkened. Then they looked at Yan Xuan. They waited for Yan Xuan's reply. Yan Xuan smiled faintly and his face turned cold. King of Gaio, do you know where this place is? Yan Xuan said coldly. King of Gaio looked at him coldly. This is the Yin capital of the Great Jin examination. Here, even if all the gods and Buddhas came, they will not be able to take my people away. Yan Xuan said coldly. When Yan Xuan spoke, the group of candidates heaved a sigh of relief. His previous apprehension dissipated by quite a bit. At the same time, they felt that they were the people of the Great Jin examination. "Ha, Yin Chuan, you will not be able to stop me today," King of Gaio said coldly. "Oh," Yin Chuan said in a low voice. "Everyone please come out." King of Gaio said plainly. Whoosh. 100 people suddenly appeared in the west of the Yen capital. The ones leading them were Zhu Yao Tianshang and Yun Xan. "Yin Di, long time no see. I have always regretted the cancellation of the battle between you and me," Zhu said with a smile. "Is that the Demon Emperor? And the Demon Emperor? Archaic Arcanum sect leader?" Immediately, the people of the Yen capital recognized him. "Zhu." Yin Chuan looked at Zhu coldly. "Like King of Gaio, I do not want to be your enemy. For your world examination, I will only take the candidates from the Northern Divine Continent. They belong to the Northern Divine Continent. They are mine," Zhu said with a smile. The most powerful person in the world 30,000 years ago had an extraordinary temperament. Although he was aggressive, he looked very magnanimous. Yin Chuan sneered as he shifted his gaze away from Zhu Ji's side and looked at another mountain top. There were 6 men standing on the mountain. The one leading them was Meng Sansheng from the Archaic Sect Sacred Ground. The 5 behind him were all immortals from the Archaic Sect Sacred Ground. At this moment, all 6 immortals were looking at Yin Chuan. "Meng Sansheng?" Yin Chuan looked at Meng Sansheng coldly. One had to know that Yin Chuan had saved Meng Sansheng once. Meng Sansheng took a deep breath and said, "Yin Chuan, I don't want so many people. I only want one person among your candidates." Yin Chuan sneered. King of Gaio and Zhu looked at Meng Sansheng curiously. "One person? Oh. Inhen Tian. I only want him." Meng Sansheng pointed at a man holding a brush in the middle of the examination hall. The man had green hair and green clothes. His face was sickly white and he had a small mustache on his chin, which added to his vicissitudes of life. At this moment, the green-haired man was holding a brush and writing on a piece of white paper. As he wrote, the tip of the brush seemed to emit wisps of green mist, which wrapped around the white paper. Faintly, one could hear the faint sound of killing coming from the brush. Inhen Tian. What a good Inhen Tian. When the crowd was closing in, Inhen Tian was not disturbed. Instead, he was the first person to write as if the quarrel did not exist at all. As Inhen Tian began to write, Yin Chuan's eyes flashed with admiration. The candidates only had one goal, which was to concentrate on the examination. How could they write a splendid essay when they were worried about the exterior? "Yin Chuan, as long as you give Inhen Tian to me, the Holy Land of the God Sect will help you defend the examination," Meng Sansheng said again. The moment Meng Sansheng opened his mouth, the flames in King of Gaio's eyes flickered. He was obviously dissatisfied with Meng Sansheng. Yin Chuan smiled faintly and said, "Defend my world exam? If any of the candidates here is lost, the examination will be flawed." "Yin Chuan, you better think carefully," Meng Sansheng said coldly. Yin Chuan's eyes turned cold and he sneered, "Impossible." The determined, "impossible," made all the candidates in the square calm down. With Yin Henshin's words, most of the candidates turned their attention back to the paper on the table, thinking about the examination question. Meng Sansheng snorted. "Who else is there? Come out together." Yin Chuan shouted coldly. Not far from the mountain where Meng Sansheng was, more than 100 figures appeared. The leader was Kong Dao Chiu from the West Divine Continent. Kong Dao Chiu held the Spring and Autumn Scroll in his hand, and his noble spirit soared into the sky. He landed on the peak of a mountain and looked around. "Kong Dao Chiu?" Yin Chuan looked over. Kong Dao Chiu looked at Yin Chuan coldly and then looked around coldly. A complicated look flashed through his eyes. "Yin Chuan, are you willing to form an alliance with the Kong family?" Kong Dao Chiu asked. When Kong Dao Chiu opened his mouth, the people from the other 3 forces were shocked. They only wanted to ruin the examination and make the great Jin dynasty lose its prestige. But Kong Dao Chiu was too arrogant. Forming an alliance with the Kong family? He wanted to swallow the whole of the great Jin dynasty. "Ha ha ha, Kong Dao Chiu, have you forgotten what I said 10 years ago? Let everyone from the Kong family kowtow in front of my mother's grave before talking to me about joining the great Jin dynasty." Yin Chuan refused coldly. "How dare you?" The immortals behind Kong Dao Chiu shouted angrily. Kong Dao Chiu waved his hand and stopped the people behind him. At the same time, he looked at Yin Chuan with a complicated expression. There was also a hint of anger in his eyes. In a valley on the outskirts of Yanjing, The emperor and his 12 disciples stood in a secluded place. The 12 sword Dao geniuses looked curiously at the scene in front of them. Master Yin Chuan is so domineering. Is he going to fight against all 4 of them? They are not just mortals. They are even a group of immortals. One of the disciples exclaimed. Fighting against the world with his own strength? Just this kind of courage is admirable. Another disciple sighed. While everyone was exclaiming, they suddenly noticed that something was wrong. It was the emperor. At this moment he was holding the bronze saber and staring at Yin Chuan. The emperor's eyes were bloodshot and his hands were trembling slightly. It was as if he was suffering a great torment in his heart. Master, what's wrong? Master, it can't be that your enemy is Yin Chuan, right? All the disciples looked at the emperor in shock. Chapter 1050. Great Jin Celestial Empire, Yin Capital. All the heroes had arrived and they all stared coldly at Yin Chuan. Everyone had the same goal, to destroy this examination. If they succeeded, Great Jin Celestial Empire would officially lead the world. Putting aside the fact that the Great Jin dynasty was the strongest in terms of strength, it was mainly because of its prestige. Prestige was something that couldn't be seen or touched. However, it could sometimes gather people's hearts. Once Yin Chuan grew stronger, he would be able to attract even more talents. Destroy. Everyone had to destroy. Yin Chuan, I'll ask you one more time. Are you going to hand over the candidates from the southern divine continent? King of Gai asked coldly. Yin Chuan smiled coldly. Those who enter Great Jin's examination hall will be treated as subjects of Great Jin. We will never compromise. After Yin Chuan finished speaking, the expressions of all the examinees perked up. All of them looked at Yin Chuan with even more respect. The examinees who had been selected early on didn't have any complaints about the Great Jin University. Instead, they yearned to enter the Great Jin University during the next imperial examination. King of Gai's face darkened. Meng Sansheng's face darkened. Kong Daoqiu's face darkened. Zhu's face darkened as well. The 4 forces looked coldly in front of them. Suddenly, the 4 forces released their auras. The powerful auras rushed towards Yin Capital. The powerful auras forced the faces of countless people in Yin Capital to turn pale. The storm was coming. Although Yin Capital was big, it seemed to be surrounded by the 4 forces at this moment. Humph. Ching. A pitch-black long sword suddenly shot up to the sky. Bang. With the black sword as the center, billions of sword chi suddenly shot out. Billions of sword chi instantly surrounded Yin Capital and formed a giant shield made of billions of sword chi. The giant sword chi shield protected Yin Capital and all of its citizens in an instant. The citizens of Yin Capital suddenly felt the pressure lifted. All of them heaved a sigh of relief. Jade Emperor's sword array? King of Gai's face darkened. 1 sword to protect a city. The Jade Emperor's sword has become an immortal artifact after absorbing the evil aura of the demon lotus? Kong Daoqiu's eyes narrowed. Kong Daoqiu looked at Yin Chuan and sighed. Yin Chuan gave himself one surprise after another. The Jade Emperor's sword, a Dharma treasure that he looked down on in the past, had actually advanced to an immortal artifact today? Yin Chuan stood at the entrance of the skyward hall, coldly looking at the incoming attacks from all directions. King Gaiyu, Meng Sansheng, Kong Daoqiu, and Zhu all had ugly expressions on their faces. Since his aura could not stump De Zhen, then he could only make a move to forcefully disrupt the situation. Although the Jade Emperor's sword array was strong, there were many immortals present. It could not stop everyone. However, Yin Chuan had used the Jade Emperor's sword formation to set up a primer. It was a primer to decide who would make the first move. It wasn't that they couldn't break it, but whoever was the first to break the Jade Emperor's sword formation would be the leader of the alliance. There would be no benefits for being the leader of the alliance. Instead, they would bear the greatest hatred from De Zhen. In the future, Great Zhen would not rest until one of them was dead. Yin Chuan's cold eyes scanned the surroundings. He forced everyone to choose. At that instant, the 4 great factions hesitated. They looked at each other. There was silence. At the entrance of the skyward hall, Yin Chuan sneered. Finally, after a while, it was Zhu. Zhu was the first to take a step forward. Looks like I'll be the one to do it. Zhu smiled. As soon as Zhu spoke, Yao Tianshang and Yun Xian were worried. They wanted to say something, but Zhu shook his head. If he didn't even have the courage to offend others, how could he create a prosperous country? Zhu waved his hand and a white jade bracelet appeared in his hand. However, there was a gap on the jade bracelet, like a small white dragon circling around it. Its head and tail were close, but they didn't connect. It was a jade pendant. He threw the jade pendant into the sky. The jade pendant shook and immediately let out a dazzling white light. Under the white light, the jade pendant slowly straightened and turned into a white dragon, charging towards the Jade Emperor's sword array. Roar! The white dragon let out a long roar and rushed forward with a huge storm. As soon as the white dragon appeared, countless people in Yanjin were shocked. Another immortal artifact? Someone immediately recognized it. Roar! Bai Long looked ferocious. He was about to crash into the Jade Emperor's sword array. His powerful aura seemed to be able to shatter the Jade Emperor's sword array with one strike. At the entrance of the Skyward Palace, Yan Chuan looked coldly at the scene before him. Just when everyone thought he was about to crash into the Jade Emperor's sword array, something suddenly appeared in front of Bai Long. Boom! Bai Long collided with the thing that suddenly appeared. Under the huge impact, a huge storm swept across the sky. The huge shockwave even destroyed a large part of the surrounding mountains. Bai Long crashed back and a bamboo scroll appeared at the place where he collided. The words "Spring and Autumn" were written on the bamboo scroll. Kong Daoqiu. Countless cultivators looked at Kong Daoqiu in surprise. Wasn't the Spring and Autumn bamboo scroll Kong Daoqiu's treasure? Kong Daoqiu blocked Ju's attack? The Jade Emperor's sword array was still there, but the experts around felt like the world had turned upside down. Kong Daoqiu, what are you doing? Yao Tianshang said coldly. Kong Daoqiu? Are you trying to help Yan Chuan? Yan Chuan didn't promise you anything. Yun Xian said in a low voice. Ju's eyes narrowed. Not only Ju's side, but the 100 people Kong Daoqiu brought with him were also very confused. Family head, what are you doing? Family head, why are you helping Yan Chuan? Immediately, the Kong family disciples shouted. Yan Chuan was so detestable in everyone's hearts. Didn't he come this time to help the family head disrupt the examination? Why did the family head stop Ju? Kong Daoqiu looked at Ju with a ferocious expression. The strongest person in the world 30,000 years ago is indeed extraordinary. Kong Daoqiu said in a low voice. In the distance, Yan Chuan also looked confused. Kong Daoqiu? Why did he help him? Ju was silent for a while, then said, Kong Daoqiu? What are you trying to do? You want to help Yan Chuan? Family head. What are you doing? An immortal from the Kong family said in surprise. Kong Daoqiu said in a low voice, I don't need to explain anything to you. Kong family disciples, listen up. As the family head, I order you to stop the Yao Imperial Empire with me. The Kong family disciples were confused and looked at Kong Daoqiu in surprise. Although they didn't understand, they all nodded in the end. Yes, family head. In the distance, Yan Chuan's eyes narrowed as he stared at Kong Daoqiu. Yan Chuan had prepared a lot for this day. Although it might be difficult to face so many people, it was still within his limits. But now, Kong Daoqiu was suddenly on his side? Yan Chuan was confused by Kong Daoqiu's attitude. Perhaps he knew too little about Kong Daoqiu. He was on his side. What? Kong Daoqiu stopped Ju. Yan Chuan turned to Li Si. Li Si nodded and quickly left the square. Soon they arrived at a large hall. There were 5 people sitting in the hall. Meng Ziqiu and 4 immortals from the Julu Academy. Li Si, what's going on? Why did Kong Daoqiu suddenly attack Ju? Meng Lingtian asked in surprise. Li Si smiled wryly. I don't know the details, but it's better this way. His Majesty asked me to inform you that you will fight Ju with Kong Daoqiu later. You can stop the immortals from the Archaic Arcanum sect. That's enough. Li Si smiled. It seems like we got a bargain? Meng Ziqiu said. Li Si also nodded strangely. Finally, Li Si said again, everyone, His Majesty has always kept his promises. What you did today, His Majesty will pay you back 100 times over. Meng Ziqiu and the others nodded. Outside Yanjin, Kong Daoqiu led the Kong family in front of Ju. King Guai and Meng Sanqing's faces also darkened. If that's the case, let me do it. Meng Sanqing said coldly. Meng Sanqing took a step forward and flew into the sky. The 5 immortals followed closely behind. Meng Sanqing's face was fierce. He took out the giant purple gourd on his back and threw it into the sky. Treasure, please take it. Meng Sanqing shouted. The mouth of the giant Hong Meng gourd suddenly produced a powerful suction force. As soon as the suction force appeared, the clouds within thousands of miles were drawn in. They went straight into the mouth of the gourd and the suction force was directed at the Jade Emperor's sword array. As soon as the powerful suction force appeared, it immediately caused a storm in the surroundings. The sword chi of the Jade Emperor's sword array shook violently. Although the Jade Emperor's sword was already an immortal artifact, It was still slightly weaker than the Hong Meng gourd. Boom. For a moment, the sword chi rolled toward the mouth of the gourd as if it was going to be completely absorbed. Meng Sanxing's eyes were ferocious. At the entrance of the skyward palace, Yen Chuan's eyes flashed with a hint of anger. Just as Yen Chuan was about to attack, suddenly from a valley below, a huge green energy saber shot up into the sky. The giant energy blade was like a heavenly sword. It sliced through the void and reached the Hong Meng gourd in an instant. Boom. There was another huge collision. As the void trembled, azure and purple light seemed to dye the world in an instant. Buzz. The Hong Meng gourd was carefully put away by Meng Sanxing. Meng Sanxing looked at the valley where the energy blade shot out from in surprise. In the valley, a woman with short hair and a bronze saber in her hand looked over with a heroic look in her eyes. Behind the woman were 12 disciples. They were also looking at the sky coldly. The energy blade came from the woman. The woman took a step forward and shot into the sky. The 12 disciples remained in the valley. The emperor. It was the emperor who blocked Meng Sanxing's attack. The emperor's back was facing Yen Chuan as he looked coldly at Meng Sanxing. "You're the emperor?" Meng Sanxing's face darkened. "Take your people and scram back to the divine realm. Otherwise die," the emperor said coldly. Meng Sanxing didn't speak. An immortal behind Meng Sanxing suddenly said with disdain, "Die? Haha, you reckless girl. When I became famous, where were you?" Ching. A cold light flashed in the emperor's eyes. He didn't waste any time and slashed with his saber. Another energy blade slashed down at the immortal. Whoosh. Before the energy saber arrived, the killing intent had already arrived. The immortal's expression suddenly changed. Not good. The immortal's treasure shot into the sky. The other 4 immortals beside him also attacked the emperor's saber. Boom. The 5 immortals attacked together, shattering the sovereign's astral saber. However, the 5 immortals were sent flying hundreds of meters away. The immortal's artifact that had been used to provoke the sovereign also shattered. The immortal's immortal artifact shattered and his mind was affected. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. "Scram or die," the emperor said coldly again. Meng Sanxing's face turned ugly. Who would dare to underestimate the emperor now? With a saber in hand, he could kill gods and demons. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.